Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Check 1 2.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, this is Tina Williams.
Ready? Everybody ready?
Yes.
Take your time. Good morning. I am Council Member Louis Vieira, Chairman of the HART Board of Directors. Please silence all electronic devices for the duration of the meeting. Excuse me. Welcome to the July 15, 2024 Board of Directors regular meeting, which is now called to order. The meeting format is hybrid with board members physically present at the HART Administrative Office at 1201 East 7th Avenue, Florida Conference Room, and participating via communication media technology. Let us begin, please, with the Pledge of Allegiance. Stand if you're able to do so. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Thank you. I'd also like to recognize two incoming board members and appointees from the state of Florida. Governor Ron DeSantis appointed Mr. Brian, McAlftrick. I'm sorry. Brian, my apologies. And Mr. Thomas Hobbs to serve 3-year terms on the HART Board of Directors. As you know, these two seats on the board were vacant for a number of years, and we're very excited to have these two gentlemen here to complete our current board membership. Brian is a shareholder and executive committee director and practice group leader at the Bush Ross Law Firm. He is very active in his community and has served as chairman of the Florida Bar Grievance Committee for the 13th Judicial Circuit. Hope I never have to meet you in that capacity. And has been recognized as Florida's legal elite by Florida Trend. He earned his bachelor's degree from Bates College and his Juris Doctor from Indiana University. So welcome here, Brian. We're really excited to have you, sir. I mean that. Thank you, sir. Next is Mr. Thomas Hobbs, who is Chief of Staff for the Port of Tampa Bay. He is currently serving in the Florida Army National Guard and is board member of the Propeller Club of Tampa Bay. Director Hobbs earned his bachelor's degree in interdisciplinary social science and his master's degree in political science from Florida State University. Welcome, sir. Really pleasure to have you. I mean that. Thank you, sir. So please welcome these HART Board of Directors, and would either one of y'all gentlemen like to say anything?
Say your name correctly first.
Yes, thank you.
Brian Mackel. But I respond to anything close.
Thank you. You want to say anything, sir?
No,
or?
just a pleasure to be on the board and enjoy the opportunity to serve the state of Florida and the organization, and really pleased to be able to serve. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Director Hobbs, want to say anything, sir?
I just want to echo the same thing. It's a pleasure to be here. Really excited to see what we can do here at this board, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here from the governor for the state of Florida and to represent.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate both of you gentlemen. I mean that. Thank you very much. And would any board members like to say anything? Just welcoming words? I would think not. Okay, welcome. There you go.
Welcome.
There you go. We're excited to have both of y'all here. Next is public comment. Before we open the public comment, I would like to read the following statement into the record. HART General Counsel also has a statement for the board members. And here is the statement. The HART Board of Directors welcomes comments from citizens about any issue or concern. Your issues are valued in terms of providing input to the board members. When addressing the board, comment shall not be directed personally against a specific board member or a staff member, but rather directed at the issues. This provides mutual respect between the board member, staff, and the public. public. The board has set aside a 30-minute period for public comment in compliance with a HART Board Policy 210, subsection 4A. Speakers were able to sign up to speak either in person or virtually at meetings by contacting the board administrator before 5 p.m. yesterday. Speakers were also given an opportunity to sign up today. I will call on speakers by name in the order in which their requests to speak have been received. When addressing the board, please state your name and speak clearly. Up to 3 minutes are allowed for each speaker. Next, HART General Counsel Julia Mandel also has a statement for board members. Go ahead.
Thank you, and welcome to our new members. I just wanted to remind the board members and also let the new board members know that during the process of public comment, members of the public have the right to speak on any issue that they deem appropriate and fit as it relates to this board. There are certain items that may come up, such as union negotiations, a pending claim, or other such items which have legal ramifications to them. If those are issues that come up, they certainly have the right to make those comments on the record, but I would remind board members not to speak about those items specifically in the board meeting, because either there's a legal issue behind them, or during union negotiations, this board is an ultimate determiner of that process, so it would be inappropriate for us to comment on that. So if those issues do come up and there's a question, I'm happy to answer that question, but just wanted to let you all know ahead of time. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And by the way, one thing I forgot, let's do roll call. Better late than never. Yeah, I know. My bad.
Director Cameron Cepeda. Director Hartfield.
Present.
Director Henderson.
Present.
Director Hobbs.
Present.
Director King.
Present.
Director Knight.
Present.
Director McAlpatrick. Director Mechanic. Director Myers.
Here.
Director Schisler.
Here.
Chair Vieira.
Here.
Director Williams.
Here.
Director Wolstall.
Here.
Thank you. You do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's go ahead and begin with public comments. And we first begin with virtual. Tina Williams.
Good morning, board members. My name is Tina Williams. I come before you today once again to talk about the route and how the routes continue to be a problem with the ridership, especially with our constituents who have disabilities and limited mobility. For instance, the Route 6, which is a very popular, very dense route, is continually late. No matter what time of the day, and I find this very interesting since this is a route that a lot of our HART employees take to get to the base station on 40th Street, and this route continues to be late. The routes are still not connecting. We're getting ready to come upon our school system, and now the routes are late and there's no traffic. It's only going to compound the problem when school starts. School starts approximately August the 12th. New routes start the 4th, and yet the routes continue not to connect. Also, I want to talk about the route, for instance, in particular, the Route 33. Since the new markup has started, now I continuously have to wait to go home an additional hour. And when the other routes are late, it makes no sense for the routes to be coming in as the connector buses throughout the city are leaving. For instance, the 33 leaves the UAT at the top of the hour, hence 9, 10, 11, 12. The routes 5 or 6 are coming into the transfer station at UATC at 11:01. They're not connecting. There's no reason that constituents should have to wait an entire hour because of a bus was late for 1 minute. You all need to really look at the schedule, not the computer generation doesn't include the traffic. It doesn't include when the routes are late. All this combining, all that you all have done is you've just taken routes out of the system, and the public is having a hard time getting to where they need to feed their families. This is particularly important, as I said, because school is coming up. I still would love to challenge all of the board members to actually come and ride the bus. There are a lot of things that the computer is not taking into account. You all say that you are for the constituents. People have to change their job schedules every 3 months because the bus routes keep changing. We've got to do better. We have a lot more students with disabilities who are attending USF. They're getting turned around. That bus, that 4833, is consistently late. There's been more than one occasion where I've had to call in where the buses just don't show up. The app, Flamingo app, does not work properly. There's been a lot of technical issues, and you all really need to take a look at this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. And I would also ask, please, if members of the public, when someone is speaking, to not say anything at all for the meeting. Thank you very much. Next, we have Mr. Charles Loeb, and I believe that's all for virtual, right? Okay, great. Mr. Charles Loeb. Go ahead, Charles.
Charles Loeb, Terrace Park neighborhood. I wanted to make, first of all, I want to make a compliment to some of the drivers on July 6th because they let us wait inside the buses instead of sweltering in the hub while, over the break time over there. But mainly I came down here to talk about various projects that you all are involved with. I did get some information in dealing with USF. Matter of fact, I come up with an idea, put the pieces of the puzzle together to come up with a settlement with them if that's what you all want to do. I cannot explain it in 3 minutes. I'm not going to even attempt to, but I can show it to you or anybody that would be interested in it. And I also have a name of a contact. Her name is Sarah Hendricks. She's like the person from the Cutter Center who is kind of advising the administration over there. That's number one. Number two, I was thinking about the grants that you all got, and that is for the 34 and for the 400. Now, the 400 is a little bit tricky going down Nebraska in order to get the buses, to get the more bus service onto where it was the pre-COVID levels. But the 34 on Hillsborough is relatively simple. I was thinking about the idea of running an express bus along there, along the same route, so you don't have to do any routing or any new bus stops. And of course, you'll have money from the grant, which is almost $300,000. So I did want to mention that. And finally, when I was talking about the, about my little program that I'm trying to work on that in order to get you all some money, I did find a little something going through my old paperwork now about the family unity passes. That was, Allstate was sort of interested when I talked about this back in 2007. So I will show, again, if you all would want to see it, that would be fine to see the letter and all that. And also, if you all would want to see what I have in mind, I didn't realize that. If you all want to see what I have in mind, I'll be happy to show it to you after the meeting or whenever. Oh, well, I'll finish anyway. Well, yeah, have a nice day and nice summer.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate you. Next is Corwin Williams.
Good morning. My name is Corwin Williams. I'm a bus operator for HART. This month marks my 23rd year as a bus operator for them. In my 23 years, HART has averaged probably, I'd say, a CEO approximately every 3 years. That's including the interims. When it comes down to permanent CEOs, each time they look for an individual to come in here to represent the authority, they do these nationwide searches. They spend these thousands of dollars to find these individuals. Within the first year, they come before the board seeking raises and bonuses approved by the board in the thousands of dollars again. After the scandals, which occur in almost every situation, they leave with some obscene severance pay approved by this board. Now, I'm here as an ATU member, and I'm just asking that you use that same influence okay, to have HART honor an agreement, a binding contract that was entered into regarding the COVID pay, which was time and a half for ATU collective bargaining unit. I feel that you can use that same influence to have them honor that contract so that we can be made whole, okay? It was ratified, approved by this board, and basically, we want to be made whole. We're not talking about Subway sandwiches or pizza. We just want to be made whole according to the letter of the contract. Okay, and that's basically all I have to say. And I hope that this hasn't fallen on dead ears. And you got to realize that every time someone comes before you saying that it's a hostile work environment or there's low morale, okay, this is a prime example of what we're talking about. Okay, because we put our families at jeopardy being out there driving during this epidemic, okay, global epidemic, okay, and we weren't made whole according to that. So that's what I'm here for, and I appreciate your time, and everybody have a blessed day.
Thank you, sir. Next
Mr.
is-
Chair, if I could just make
Oh,
a comment
yes, ma'am,
at that.
please.
I just wanted to let the board know that 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 issue that was just raised is part of a pending grievance process that is ongoing. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Board Member Myers.
Excuse me,
And-
can I just ask a
And
question?
wait, Board Member Myers, then Board Member Henderson. Go ahead.
Madam Legal Counsel, how long is it going to take this process to end? Because they've been coming before us for quite some time, and if this board need to make a decision to put a little bit of pressure with the legal counsel to make sure that we can go ahead and come back to us with a report, it should not take that long to expedite this situation.
What I understand is the pending grievance was filed relatively recently. Why don't I find out where that is exactly in the process as your outside labor counsel is handling it, and I can report that back to you.
Is it possible you can call your firm now?
It's not our firm that handles it. You have outside labor counsel, but I can go find that information out.
Okay, can you do that while we're in meeting this morning?
I absolutely can.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Board Member Henderson, go ahead, ma'am. Did you have a question?
Well, I just discovered that because she's not the legal counsel for grievance, it would be difficult for her to answer the question.
Okay.
So it's
Sure.
not necessary. On our behalf, though, for clarification, when can we ask those questions? At the end under new business or?
I would say try it under new business to the
Okay.
extent it's applicable and can be
Thank you.
asked. Mhm. Okay, thank you very much, madam. Next, we go to Devon Hastings.
Morning. My name is Devon Hastings. I'm a retired paratransit bus driver operator. I'm here basically to support the drivers because when I was working with HART, I had my own set of problems with increases that I'm entitled to that HART entered into bargaining with the union. And I'm here to support the drivers and also John Green with the agenda of the drivers not getting money that they was allocated for COVID. And just about a year and a half after I retired, I received monies from HART that they denied me while I was working. I received a check in the mail. I was surprised. And I realized that HART takes a lot of the problems that the drivers are having into litigation, and it costs them money when the board could have voted to pay the drivers and save all that money instead of giving it to attorneys. And that's what they're facing right now with monies that they are supposed to be received for the COVID. And I urge the board to look into it and vote to pay the drivers what they are allowed to, what they are earned, and what they're entitled to. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate you. Next is Mr. Elvis Piggott.
How you doing, board? How you doing, chair?
How you doing, sir?
I'm here, same concern. I have a relative that has been working, and to be clear, my father has worked for HART for over 10 years, and we've had this conversation many times. The community in whole, we understand that was affected during COVID. tough time with families, not even being able to make ends meet, drivers making a decision to go out and continue to make sure that they can feed their families by working and putting in time. And it is almost deplorable to have the community have drivers come and beg for what belongs to them, that what they should have already had, what we should not have be here, what we should not even have to be here to do. And representing the community and making the best interest for the community should have been at the forefront from the beginning. And so I say to this board, why so much more agenda, so much more business could be handled within this board, this should not be one. And this could be fixed. And I will hope that this is something that we take serious, because families are affected. And families each and every day is being affected by what they're not getting. And they're not asking for something that don't belong to them. And when we all know the process of what the CARES Act was concerned and what it was about. And so I ask that we do what's right and make sure that we make these people whole and do it expeditiously. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate you. Next is Dolores Parker.
Good morning. I'm Dolores Parker. I'm here representing the bus operators and the van operators of HART. I was a bus driver during the time of COVID, and during the time of COVID, my daughter and my granddaughter was in the house with me, and I was driving with COVID and jeopardized my whole family. And when my daughter called me, she said, "Mom, you need to go and get tested." I went and got tested. I was positive. I had to be out for 14 days, but I feel like whatever pay we deserve, we should get it, because we work under hazardous circumstances, and we all put our lives and our family lives in jeopardy. So if there is any pay for us, we deserve it. And we thank you for it as well.
Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate you. Next is Bishop Michelle B. Patty.
Before I go on record, I'd like to point out that there's people that's standing out in the lobby.
And if I may, Bishop, if you could, for your time. Thank you, ma'am.
But I didn't want my time to start when you have people that's standing out in the lobby that cannot be in this meeting. I'm Bishop Michelle B. Patty. I'm here in support of the HART drivers, and I stand on the blood of two people that died, that they caught, two drivers who had caught COVID. Now, there was $103-point-something million that was sent here on behalf of these drivers who put their lives on the line each and every day. I hear that you all said that y'all kept people working. That's commendable. However, you cannot change a contract because you feel like it. They have a legal binding contract that state that they should receive their time and a half pay. That was not done. You have a paperwork showing that there was some back and forth, but here you don't have any signed signature from the ATU. So what we're saying here today, that these people they've earned their money, and they need it. Now, I remember when Miss LeGrand, when there was a lot of things about her double dipping and this and that, and I thought she would be taken out on handcuffs, but I'm hearing y'all gave her almost $500,000. So I'm not comprehending or understanding why this board is not moving to make sure that the drivers receive their pay. We don't have to keep this in litigation. You'd rather pay attorneys fees than to pay the drivers. Let's take the money, put it to the drivers, and this board, I'm pretty sure that y'all can make a motion to say we don't want to spend any more money on litigation. We want to do the right things by the drivers. You're asking these same drivers to support a tax. You want them to do this tax that's going to tax them, but you don't want to pay them their money. That's not fair sounding right to me. That's my thought on it. And I am a super voter, and I brought a whole lot of more super voters with me. And we will not vote for a tax to benefit HART or anyone else when it's not benefiting these drivers. 90% of them are African American. So we in 24 is saying it's time out to play in politics. We want you to stand by what you say that you're for. When you ran on that, you say you're for the people, you're going to do the right thing. So we don't know why they're still coming here years later. People died around the world during COVID. And for them to have come out and risk their lives and the lives of their families and people that die, that is saying too much, and it's showing that you really don't care about these drivers or anyone else. So I'm looking for, and I know quite a few of you all personal, so I'm looking for you all to do the right thing on behalf of these drivers today. As Commissioner has said, this has gone on long enough. It's time to stop the bleeding and do what is right. Like you do everything else, you give away money. You got a CEO making over $230,000. Well, then the drivers, they don't have that luxury to have a summer home and a winter home. They're trying to keep the roof over their head that they have now. So this board need to get in tow and do what y'all saying. Eyes on every one of y'all. And if you have some other plans of going somewhere else, just remember the vote is here.
Thank you, Bishop. We appreciate you. Next is, and no clapping, please, if you don't mind. Chamber rules, please. Thank you. Next, we have Mr. John Green. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, I'm John Green. I want to back up the claim for the $103,000, the initiative that y'all put in for 2024-25. On 10, it reads as, has the entity requesting this project received any federal assistance related to COVID-19 funds, pandemic? Yes. Then it goes on to read that HART received federal assistance in the amount of $103,378,383 through the CARES, CRRSAA, and the ARP, right? Then it goes on to say that what you're going to use the monies for, low-income communities and people of color. It's amazing how a chairperson for the city passed a resolution 344 talking about the atrocities done to the black people here in Tampa, but can sit on a board, watch these people go through pain and apologize for it and not do anything. That's a slap in our face as a colored community. And for your 344, maybe you should add black to it and people of color. Let's just specify who you with. Now 90%. Stand up. All the drivers stand up. They're hurting. This is on you. And we're going to, come elections, look for my face. Because whoever running against you, that's the team I'm on.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate that very much. Next is Letitia Jones.
Good morning, Chair Letitia Jones, ATU President. I'm actually in tears. You can't see them falling, but they falling in my heart to listen to my coworkers. And as I look behind me, I stand with them. I understand them. And for them to have to keep coming here when we can't be discussing other important matters, and we spending hours on the same type of thing, it gets old after a while. I don't know how many of y'all still play old 45s. Probably none of us. That's how this board ought to be. We need to be able to move on from this. Do what's right and move on. I stand with my coworkers. I empathize. I sympathize. I was there. I even helped funeralize one of the persons that died. That wasn't good. But I'm just asking this board, listen to how they feel. And they're not giving you the big scope because of what the attorney has put a parameter around what we can say and what we can't say. But if you really want to hear the truth of the matter, talk to us. Ask us personally. And some of you probably wouldn't even want to hear this again. So I'm just asking you guys, listen to my coworkers. I stand 101% as their president. And it ain't easy representing 600 and plus different personalities and diversities. It's not easy. But I stand with them. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate you. Next is Karen Peebles.
Hello, board. How are you all today? Well, I come here today to tell you again about the drivers, security, maintenance, and all of the staff that's under the high-class staff. I'm not coming to talk about them, but I am talking about one person that God allowed me to witness what he was doing. It was a driver. And I want you to understand that this young man, on June 10th, bus operator John Rivera, operator number 3960, bus 1702. This young man took the time out to help a lady all the way from St. Pete. She had dementia. This lady was lost. And who better did the Lord bring to see all this is me. The lady had dementia. She was constantly not knowing what was going on, but this driver took the time out to make sure that she was safe and secure. He not only got on the phone, he got in touch with the doctor some type of way so he can be directed on what to do. He also had the security to call the police to have them to come and get her. And she reassured her. I spoke with her briefly because she picked up a pen off the ground and handed it to me. I want you all to know. And then there's another driver, Drive for HART Plus. She told me her story, Karen. She told me how her regular rider was not in the place where she should have been. She drive for HART Plus. But she went and checked on the lady, knocked on the door. Well, come to find out, she had fell in her home and broke her arm and other things that was going on with her. So she took the time out to call the ambulance. I am continuously gonna come here, knock on y'all door, and let y'all understand. And then what gets me, you sit up here like this is a surprise package to you all when everybody's coming down here in the manner of what they are coming to allow you to know what they are going through. Again, take off your shoes and put on their shoes. I am a rider. I'm gonna ride the bus till I can get better. I ride sometimes 6 buses in a run of a day. I have a mother that's 93 years old, and I can't let her go to the senior center on the day that I have to come down here to fight for the right people that I need to fight for. See, I made myself an advocate for them. They're worthy to be fought for. You all need to listen to what I'm trying to tell you and to what's going on. Because understand this, what if you were in their place? What would you do for yourself?
We appreciate you, ma'am.
And
Thank you.
I've had family members
Thank
to
you,
die
ma'am.
of COVID.
And if I may, and your time is ended. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, and one more time.
And ma'am, we really appreciate
Let my name
you.
roll off your lips.
Yes,
Let my
ma'am.
name marinate in your mind, because I got plenty of time.
Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate you. The last speaker I have registered is Valerie Conyers.
Good morning.
Morning, ma'am.
I'm a bus operator, been here going on 5 years. You guys that sit on this board, Y'all don't understand half of the stuff that we have to go through. COVID, we lost so many people. I got COVID 3 times. 3. I lost a child. I was pregnant. I lost a child. During COVID, I was still here at work. I'm still here at work right now. My baby is sitting right out there with one of my colleagues to make sure that y'all understand the importance of our bus operators, paratransit, maintenance, customer service, streetcar. We all have a job that needs to be done, and we get our job done, but what about y'all getting y'all job done to make sure that we okay? If y'all don't make sure that we okay, we still got to make sure that these buses roll. We still got to make sure that paratransit roll. We still got to make sure that we're taking incoming calls. Put yourselves in our shoes. We got transfer centers and transit centers, Northwest. One restroom is available only it's only available for the bus operators. One. We have to share a restroom with men and women. It's been there for almost 2 years. We keep getting the same thing over and over again. The plumbing is messed up. This is messed up. That's messed up. When y'all gonna start fixing stuff? Fix with our operators first. Fix with your front line first. I'm sorry to say, y'all make the big bucks, but y'all don't do the big jobs. Understand me when I say this. We're gonna be here every single time. Every single time. You as a chairperson, I see you on your cell phone when you was walking up. I spoke, baby, you kept on walking. See, I'm a woman. I'm a woman of what I do, and I still come here every single day, whether I'm sick, and I have a newborn, whether she's sick. Understand what we have to do as a people, not just because of my skin color, but you might have a child. You might have a child that need to get somewhere. Y'all can't get them there. This young lady right here in that blue blazer, she spoke to me plain as day. The only thing I'm gonna say is, make sure y'all do what's right. Right by the drivers, right by paratransit, streetcar, customer service, the maintenance, the mechanics. Do right by us. Our president, baby, if you only knew, she fighting a battle that don't even need to be fought because y'all know what y'all need to do. Work with us, don't work against us. We the grain, we keep it going. Have a great day.
Thank you, ma'am. Do we have anybody else here for public comment? Mr. Jenkins, Arizona? Yes, sir. Go for it, sir.
Good morning, everybody. We all doing okay? I come to speak on behalf of both sides because I did waiting at the 88 board. I also ride the band every day. These drivers are doing a good job picking people up, taking them where they need to go. We need that service. If we don't take care of our drivers, we won't have the service that we have now. I get it's a hard decision on your side and on that side, but if the cops have full or they have anything, we need each other. They need a job. We need a service. So I get all drivers not gonna be good, but the ones who are good needs to have their money. You can't base the whole system on a couple of drivers. So if we have that contract with the corporate money, you should go ahead and give it to them. This don't make any sense. People are arguing about money. If we have money, pay the drivers because they working all day, all night in the weather, dealing with people's attitudes. dealing with the actual job, and they also have their own personal issues at home. If we don't be able to pay them what they deserve, they're gonna quit. And when they quit, who's gonna drive us? Where we gonna go? Are you gonna get behind this and get behind the wheel and drive the van? No, I don't think you are. Cause it's a very hard job. They have to bend down all day, locking the windshields, the lift not working. They had to deal with all that. You gotta deal with people with other claims. And so why it's late? Why we gotta go this way when I'm going this way? They had to follow the manifest. So they deal with a lot of people mess. They deal with mine. Even though I'm on the board, I did give my opinion to the drivers. Because they want to hear it. And I want to hear what they have to say as well. So that's why I got on my head to come down here.
And we thank you, sir. And sir, for the record, we know you, but may we have your name, please?
My name is Aaron Jenkins, the chair of the 88 Boys.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate you, sir. God bless you. Okay, it appears we have no one else here for public comment that I'm aware of, correct? Okay, great. Okay. Next on our agenda this morning is the election of the vice chair, and for that I will hand it off to Ms. Mandel.
Before we open nominations, I'd like to remind I am not on. I'd like to remind the board members that per HART Policy 120.03, officers, HART Board officer positions are to be filled by at least one county elected representative, with the exception of the requirement that at least one county elected representative, any board member be elected to serve as an officer. Currently, you have, as your chair, an elected member of the city of Tampa, and you also have as your board secretary, Melanie Williams, who is a citizen representative. So in order for us to proceed forward with this nomination, it would have to be someone who's an elected officer of the Board of County Commissioners. As of this time, and just what I understand is that obviously Mr. Owen has resigned his seat, which is why we have the open vice chair position. The new individual who is to be appointed by the Board of County Commissioners has not been officially appointed yet. So I did want to just let you know that it would need to be a member of the Board of County Commissioners who would have to serve in this capacity, and you are still missing one of the members from the Board of County Commissioners. So your options today are to proceed forward with the nomination, or if there is no obligation that you do it today. If you would like to wait until after you have that individual appointed, that is also within your authority, but that is completely up to the board to proceed forward. If you are going to proceed forward, I will be seeking nominations from the floor. Those nominations do not require a second.
And
Thank you.
thank you. And if I may, I first saw Board Member Myers, Board Member Cepeda, and then Board Member Schisler. Go ahead. And this is not for nominations, this is for question. Okay, that's what I thought.
Clarification. Commissioner Christine Miller has been installed as a member of the Board of County Commission.
That's what I understand, but
Yes.
she has not been I understand she is to be appointed to this board, but that action has not occurred yet by the Board of County Commissioners. So that is why she could not be seated at this board today.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Go
I
ahead,
didn't hear
ma'am.
you say that way.
Oh.
Okay, thank you.
So mine was not a question. I was going to make a nomination, but you're not ready for that right now. you
If
said?
I may, let me first see if Board Member Schisler has a question. Did you have a question or a nomination?
No, I was going to go with nomination.
Oh, okay, great. Then I first saw you, and then anybody else. Go ahead, ma'am.
I would like to nominate Commissioner Wustel.
Thank you, ma'am.
And I'll second that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anybody, and I don't say anything, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's
It's
okay.
you.
While no second is needed, I'll ask to see if there's any other nominations for that position.
I'll nominate Commissioner Myers.
Okay, there is no need for a second to that nomination, so are there any additional nominations? I'm sorry, without any additional nominations, my suggestion is that we go ahead and ask the members to state their preferred choice as we go around, and whoever either gets to the place of having the most members, we can call it then, or we can proceed forward after that.
Thank you. Board Member Knight, go ahead, sir.
Yes, were you asked to?
Oh, and
Do they agree?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't, and I'm sorry, sir, what did you say? I didn't hear.
I think the question is whether or not the members that have been nominated would like to proceed forward with their nomination.
Well said.
Yes, I accept.
Yes.
Are there any additional nominations? Seeing no additional nominations, I'll ask the clerk to poll the members.
Can I at least say something, Chair,
you would
so
like
that I
to.
can make a decision, like
She's
why
in-
they're interested?
I don't.
You're going to go straight to the vote?
If there's.
I need to hear from them. That would make it,
If that is what your request is, we can go ahead and ask to
Yes.
hear from whoever you would
Just-
like, or whatever questions you have.
Just a few words.
Certainly. We can start with Mr. Wastel, and then go to Commissioner
Sure.
Myers.
I mean, I was thrust into, before many of you members got here, much of the gross mismanagement of the organization. It was basically almost my first meeting that I had to lead the charge in undoing the disaster of the current CEO's predecessor. And I fought very hard to bring stability to this organization, and I will continue that mission going forward.
And point of clarification, Ms. Mandel, am I doing this or you?
I am okay,
Okay,
I
yes.
handle
So
all
Board
of
Member
this.
Henderson, I would direct your question to her then.
Yes.
Yes, I just would like to know, as a board member, would the vice chair support following the contract of the ATU as read and stated? Is that?
You should not answer that.
That's not a question they could answer in this capacity? Would they support a contract as?
I mean, you
is?
certainly have the right to, during this process, you typically go through statements and those kinds of comments. You don't typically have a soliloquy in this regard. I think what I hear you saying is that is something that is important to you, and you would like to hear if that is the issue. But I think going back and forth on the soliloquy of asking questions is
That's the
probably,
only question that I
yeah.
want to ask.
So that question has now been put out on the floor, and if there's any
No, there's no more
interest in commenting on that as you have comments from the two members, that is appropriate, but having it be a question answer is probably not the appropriate process.
I understand. Thank you.
Then I'll share my comments. Why I like to seek Vice Chair is to continue to work for the betterment of these employees and the services that HART has rendered to our community. I represent District 3, and I constantly share with this board of the not having bus shelters and coverage for the members. And also, I have met with the employees concerning the same issue regarding a not being paid. And as I stated this morning, that closure need to come to an end so that we can move on. This one issue has been addressed in our last 4 board meetings. It should not take legal that long and at the time to litigate an issue. And that's where I stand right now.
Without any additional comments, if there are no more comments, I'll ask the clerk to poll the members. Thank you.
Chair Vieira,
Myers.
Director Williams,
Myers.
Director Cameron-Chapreda, Director Hartfield,
Commissioner Myers?
Director Henderson,
Commissioner Myers.
Director Hobbs,
Commissioner Wastel.
Director King,
You're on mute.
you're on mute, Director King.
Director King, you are on mute.
Can you write it down?
Director Knight,
Commissioner Myers,
Director McAlpatrick,
Commissioner Wastel,
Director Mechanic, Director Myers,
Myers.
Director Schizler,
Wastel,
Director Wolstel,
Wolstel.
and Director Knight, Director King, sorry.
Director King, you are on mute. If you can unmute yourself, please.
It looks like he's admin muted with that red mute.
Oh, yeah.
Can we?
Poor guy.
I did request, it's. Can you type it in the chat, Director King?
It says the admin is turned off chat, Chair.
Oh.
Am I
yeah.
the admin? How do you, can he,
Could-
if I may?
Technology is a great thing.
Can he write it down and just show it?
Director,
Given the technology situation, if you can write it down and just show it on the screen, I'm comfortable that that would be legally sufficient.
or one for Wolstor and number 2 for Myers,
One or two, whichever.
if you want.
Technology is a wonderful thing.
Okay.
I don't know.
For the purposes of the record, let me just say that Director King has written Wastel and put it up to his screen. The reason he has done this, and again, for the purposes of the record, is because we are having a technological problem.
Yes.
Thank you. We are sitting right now at we are sitting right now at a tie. We do not have our full board. We are missing which member? Mr. Mechanic. So by operation, this would roll over to the next meeting.
And if I may, and we're also missing the
Oddly
county.
enough, I'm live now.
Hello, you are, can you please indicate, I'm sorry, for the purposes of the record, what your vote was so that I have that on record?
Wassel.
Thank you.
And we're also missing our county commission appointee, so.
That is correct, I
we could-
apologize, yes. So
No,
we're
no, no,
missing
yeah.
2 members. And so this would, by operation of process, would roll over to your next meeting
Yeah.
for this vote to be taken at that time.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Okay, so we will go forward without a vice chair today, and there you go. So next, if I may, excuse me. Next agenda item is approval of the meeting minutes from June 3rd, 2024 Board of Directors meeting. May I please have a motion for that? We have a motion by Board Member Schizler, I believe a second by Board Member Myers. Roll call, please.
Director Cameron Chapeto,
Yes.
Director Hartfield,
Yes.
Director Henderson,
I'm sorry, I missed
Oh.
it. Oh, I'm sure they can be approved, yes.
Director Hobbs,
Yes.
Director King, Director Knight,
Yes.
Director McAlpatrick,
Yes.
Director Mechanic, Director Myers,
Yes.
Director Schizler,
Yes.
Chair Vieira.
Yes.
Director Williams,
Yes.
Director Wolstel.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. Next, we have HART General Counsel Julia Mandel. You are recognized to introduce the second and final reading of the adoption of the HART Board Policy 140.03 Legal Services.
Thank you. As you may recall, at your last meeting, you did vote on an action relating to, sorry, let me just get to the right page. Related to the HART Board policy for your board attorney and for your other legal services. This would be the opportunity for your next vote. I apologize. I had to move back through the script because there's a lot happening today. So we're also going to update on the issue related to the TPO. As it relates to the TPO, I want to just kind of, especially since there's new members, go backwards as it relates to how that process has changed over time. You have traditionally, from HART, had a member of your board serving in the capacity of a board member of TPO. It cannot be a member who is also on a governmental board, who is also a member of the TPO through that appointment. It has to be a different member. Several years ago, when your previous CEO was here, the decision was made to appoint your CEO. At that time, that was a decision that was made. It was not in line with how you'd previously done it, but there was no legal prohibition from doing it that way. There have been some concerns over time that have been raised, and I've had an opportunity to speak with the attorney representing the TPO, Cameron Clark, my office has, about whether or not having the CEO of your board actually serve in that capacity, given that there does come up some concerns on sunshine law issues. If the HART CEO just happens to be speaking with other members, either of this board, or especially if they sit in other capacities or in other capacities, that whether or not, about items that are potentially going before the TPO, whether or not that would create a sunshine law violation. Now, I do want to point out that other CEOs and executive directors do sit on the TPO board. They have figured that issue out, but there is an issue there that is always going to be an issue that comes up. As a result of that, I think there has been some thought process that maybe we should go back to the original process, which was selecting a member of this board who is not already serving on the TPO as the appointee from HART. It really is a policy decision on your part. There's no legal authority that says you can't do it, but I think traditionally you have had a member of this board, and perhaps I think there's some thought that maybe going back to that process would be appropriate. If that is the will of this board to go ahead and choose a member of this board versus having the CEO serve in that capacity, we can go ahead and take nominations today to go ahead and seat on that board. And as I said, if you're already serving as a member of that board from another, such as the Board of County Commissioners, you cannot serve in that capacity. That would be a dual role you could not have. So I ask for you to go ahead and make a decision as to whether or not you want to proceed forward with that nomination, and if you do, to go ahead and I would ask for a nomination on that.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Do we have any nominations or questions? Yes, sir. Director Hartfield, go ahead, sir.
To our CEO, Mr. Drainville, any thoughts in terms of precedent or where we are today in your interest in serving? What are your thoughts?
So my thoughts are, I don't mind serving in an advisory role. I feel like as a voting member, there could be a conflict of interest because many of my board members sit on that board. So I would like to play an advisory role, myself or my designee, but I would not like to be a voting member.
If I may for that, and Director Wosel, yeah, I would support that. I served on the TPO for a few years, and that would put him in a very tough position on a lot of issues. When I say I served for 3 years, it was a tour of duty. It's not an easy board, trust me. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, the main concern that we discussed at TPO is what I discussed, Member Hartfield, is that he's the only member of the TPO that, in reality, a majority of people that hire or fire him sit on that board, and he's put in a position to have to vote for or against some of us. So we've already talked as well in terms of potential regional thinking of the MPOs, which is a long process. We've had the non-government voting members, HART, the Aviation Authority, THEA. They have agreed that it's the Aviation Authority and the Port are the two that would like to remain as voting members, but that THEA and HART would like to fall off and serve as advisory, non-voting members of the board, just like FDOT has done in the past and now only sits as an advisory role. And I've already told the TPO board, and I told the executive director of it earlier this week, that I will be bringing forward a motion to formally remove HART as a voting member, as a sign of good faith to the other MPOs in the region, to show that we're not trying to unfairly weight our voting position on the regional board by having it to where we sit on TPO and on HART, then we backdoor in another voting member of an elected official, appointing them from the HART position and unfairly weighting us with those organizations against the other two counties. So I'm fairly fine with, I believe that if anything, don't even show up. Don't even show up to vote if it's going to continue to be an issue, and that's the other honest answer if we can't make it to where it's fair to everybody. Unfortunately, the TPO removal process for HART, I'm told, is about a year process because it has to go all the way up to the governor to be signed. So it's a long process to remove them formally.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Board
I would
Member
just like
Myers.
to, as the chair of the TPO, I would just like to concur with Commissioner Wass's statement.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Director Hobbs, go ahead, sir.
I just have a quick legal question. So with this resolution, is this only for someone who can be a voting member? So let's say we pass this, then it becomes an advisory role only. Could the CEO then fill the advisory role, or is it still someone else who has to fill that?
Let me first apologize that I went way too far in the agenda of the general counsel's report and skipped right over the resolution. So I apologize for that. That being said, we're on the TPO issue, and I've confused everybody, including myself. But that being said, on the TPO issue, to answer your question, I would advise that you either choose a member here or you don't, that you don't split it between having a delegation of authority, because I think, again, there's two issues. One is more of a policy-driven issue about, and I think Commissioner Wassel is correct, HART is the only board that actually has within its body members of his board that sit in other capacities. And secondarily, as I've noted, conversations I've had with the county attorney's office that represents the TPO, they have concerns about the sunshine law potential issues that could come up. So I would recommend that you either go ahead and proceed forward with the choice of a member, or alternatively, you continue down the path you're on. But I'm also hearing that probably the better approach from a policy perspective is to go ahead and choose a member.
Board Member Schisler, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, just to clarify, because I think we've gone all the way around the rosy here. We have two options. One, we can vote as a board to remove ourselves from the TPO, which would take approximately a year to accomplish?
That's a separate conversation that is being had. That is not in front of this board. What's in front of this board, in front of the HART Board, is you have to nominate a member of your board to go ahead and serve in that capacity, or keep the status quo, which has your CEO serving as the delegated member to the TPO.
Okay, so the removal is not
That's
in
not in
question
front of
here
you.
today. When will that come before this group?
I would need to get more information, but I think we're talking about a period of time, because I think that might require a legal change in order to make that happen.
Okay, all right, I'm good, thank you.
Anyone else? Do we, Commissioner or Board Member Wosel? Go ahead, sir.
We could just simply vacate the position and not fill it, though, right? Because the other option now is, okay, you've got Councilman Schisler. Well, the mayor of Temple Terrace already sits on TPO. You have, I believe I heard that there's another employee of the port is now on this board, and they have a person, so that introduces another complication. It just seems like we should vacate the position at this point.
I can't answer that question as I sit here, unfortunately, without looking at both the TPO. Well, it appears we might have somebody who can answer that question if it's within the purview of the chair to allow that.
And if I may, and then Board Member Myers, and I don't think it's, but go ahead, ma'am.
Good morning, I'm Gina Torres. I'm the Assistant Director at the TPO. Vacating that position sounds very similar to even changing it from a non-voting. We'd probably have to still go through that same interlocal agreement update, which goes through all the attorneys of all the 10 agencies represented. That's why it takes so long. And up to the
No, I mean, we have many roles that we have left vacant. This has nothing to do with that. Yeah.
And yes, I understand what Ms. Torres is saying.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying as well.
Yeah.
The question is do we just not fill it, and what would that mean? I would be very reluctant to answer that question today. That being said, perhaps what you can do, if this is within your decision, is we can hold off on the nomination, but in the meantime, today, take an action to remove the delegation to your CEO, so that way he's not continuously being placed in what sounds to me not just from a policy position, not the most optimum situation, but also, as I've said, there's some legal ramifications that come up with that as well. You can go ahead and just remove him today. Let me look at that issue, and I can come, I think 1 month probably isn't going to create that much of a problem at the TPO without it not being filled. Allow the opportunity for me to look at that issue and come back to you next month with a report during the general counsel report, not in the wrong place in the agenda, where I can actually have that conversation with y'all.
Thank you. And go ahead, sir, and then.
I'm going to make a motion. I'm going to make a motion to vacate our current appointee to the TPO representation from HART until at which time legal counsel can review the current policies in place.
Second.
Okay, we have a second. And now, first, if I may, let's go to Board Member Myers and Board Member Williams. Go ahead.
Thank you. I don't think we need to vote to vacate because the next TPO meeting is not until August 14th, in which we will hear from our counsel here with a report back, and then we can make a decision. That will give us time enough to address that issue.
Thank you, ma'am. Board Member Williams. Go ahead.
For clarification, who attended the last TPO meeting?
Not me.
From HART?
So I believe, yes, my designee, Justin Willits.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other further comments? So we have a motion right now by Board Member Wosel, seconded by Board Member Williams, which is to vacate, sir, if I may, I want to clarify, it's to vacate that position, to divest ourselves of that position?
Just vacate the current appointee. It'll leave the role vacant
I
until legal
would-
counsel arrives.
I would characterize it as remove the delegation to your CEO as a member of the HART Board. Characterize it as a removal of that delegation. Then what would come to you next month would be my report on whether or not you can just leave it vacant, or we can take an action to appoint a
Okay.
member of this board.
So this, in effect, leaves it vacant for a month?
It leaves it vacant for a month.
Okay, thank you. I guess.
Do we
any-
need to restate the motion?
I guess if
We can, I accept that friendly amendment.
okay, there you
Yeah,
go.
second.
Okay, any further statements or questions? Okay.
I have a question,
Oh,
Mr.
yes,
Chair.
sir.
What are the implications for the TPO if, what does their bylaw say?
That's what I need to look at,
Yeah,
as to whether or not we leave that as a vacant position or not. So, but from what I understand, from a timing perspective, we're going to have another meeting before the TPO meets again, so that'll give me adequate time to
Okay.
actually have that, look at that issue, talk to the county attorney's office, and advise you at your next meeting, so you could either choose someone or not choose someone, depending on what I find out.
great, thank you. Maureen, go ahead, ma'am.
And just for clarification, we are alleviating the issue with the CEO. That's what this motion cares for. Thank you.
Okay, roll call, please.
Director Cameron Cepeda,
Yes.
Director Hartfield,
Yes.
Director Henderson,
Yes.
Director Hobbs,
Yes.
Director King. You're on mute, Director King. Director Knight,
Yes.
Director McAlpatrick,
Yes.
Director Myers,
Yes.
Director Schisler,
Yes.
Chair Viera,
Yes.
Director Williams,
Yes.
Director Wostel,
Yes.
Director King. Motion passes
I made it
unanimously.
pass.
He's still having technical issues. I don't know if we can figure that out.
And next, were there any further comments, Ms. Mandel, on the general counsel policy?
I apologize, yes. Going back to number 7, which I unfortunately skipped over, I would be asking for a motion to approve Resolution R 2024-07-19, adopting the revisions to the HART Board Policy 140.03 for legal services. For the purposes of the record, this has been highly discussed and analyzed. We have now revised with this motion, you would be revising the policies for legal services, which better delineate how your legal services are moving forward and would change the position that I currently hold, and Gray Robinson currently holds, from general counsel to board counsel, but it is in line with the RFP that had previously been issued. Thank you.
Unless if there's any questions, may I have a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion by Board Member Wosel, seconded by Board Member Schisler. Unless if there's any questions or comments, roll call, please.
Director Cameron Cepeda,
Yes.
Director Hartfield,
Yes.
Director Henderson,
Yes.
Director Hobbs,
Yes.
Director King, Director Knight,
Yes.
Director McAlpatrick,
Yes.
Director Myers,
Yes.
Director Schisler,
Yes.
Chair Vieira,
Yes.
Director Williams,
Yes.
Director Woolston.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. Consent agenda is next. Finance and Audit Committee met on June 17th of 2024 and advanced the items 8A through 8E for approval by the full Board of Directors. Are there any questions about this consent agenda item? Okay, may I have a motion to approve?
Move for approval.
We have a motion by Board Member Myers, seconded by Board Member Schisler. Unless there's any further comments, roll call, please.
Director Cameron Cepeda,
Yes.
Director Hartfield,
Yes.
Director Henderson,
Yes.
Director Hobbs,
Yes.
Director King, Director Knight,
Yes.
Director McAlpatrick,
Yes.
Director Myers,
Yes.
Director Schisler,
Yes.
Chair Vieira,
Yes.
Director Williams,
Yes.
Director Woolston.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. Next is the action items and presentations. The HART Strategic Planning and External Relations Committee met on June 17th of this year and advanced the action item Resolution R 2024-07-25 to authorize the Chief Executive Officer to execute a task order to WSP USA Incorporated to complete a comprehensive operations analysis for a not-to-exceed amount of $450,508 for the full board consideration and action. CEO Drainville, if you don't mind, sir, introducing the item.
Good morning, board members. As noted by Chair Vieira, the members of the Strategic Planning and External Relations Committee reviewed this action item and the presentation. However, staff would like to ensure that the full board also has an opportunity to hear from staff on the scope of the comprehensive operations analysis. So the COA is a comprehensive assessment of the transit system, including potential route changes or to improve efficiency and coverage, identification of existing and future transit needs, development of future transit service plans, and the estimation of future operating capital costs. HART developed a scope of services to conduct a COA utilizing HART's general consultant services. The COA is one of the several recommendations from the HART's Governance and Operations Management Analysis completed by the Florida Department of Transportation. I would like to invite to the podium Mr. Justin Willits, HART's Director of Planning and Scheduling, to present on this.
Go ahead, sir.
Morning, Chair, board members, returning and new, and CEO Drainville. Justin Willits, for the record, Director of Planning and Scheduling, and I will walk you through. That intro was helpful and hopefully will save me some words here, and I'll try to move this along, but also do a little bit of education as we move through for the new folks and for the board members who have not been here during the comprehensive operations analysis in the past. As the CEO just stated, one of the main components for my department as it relates to the FDOT study is updating a comprehensive operations analysis and transit development plan. The COA basically assesses our operation for fixed route and streetcar and on-demand service and look to see if we're meeting the demand we should and how things have changed since the last time we revamped our route and our service area. One of the important components of this COA is that The last time we really looked at this critically was pre-COVID. Given the changes in our service area and Tampa Bay in general, we've seen more change in housing demand and pricing than this cities and this county have really ever seen. So taking a look back at what the community needs now versus what it needed 5 years ago are going to be a lot different than it's ever been. And I could get into the whole background of why, but I think you all know just based on affordability reasons, people are living different places and transit demand is just not the same place as it has been for 10, 20 years. And that's part of what this study looks at. The components of a COA, and we will refer to this as a COA from here on, so get used to hearing that. We do a system analysis. We look at the route performance, the geographic coverage, different demographics of our riders, the connectivity of the routes, look at our service standards, which guide how we put resources. Resources also means operators and buses and paratransit vans in certain places to meet the demand for transportation. The benefits are we have an efficiency enhancement on some of these routes, and we reallocate those resources as the data dictates. Data-driven decisions, a big component of that, and then we want to optimize the service to give our customers and the community the best service we can with the resources we have. And then the results, we defined the needs of the system, which is part of the transit development plan that we have to do for the state to get their funding and federal funding. But we have to have an unfunded needs plan, which shows where we need service that we currently can't afford. But the main thing we get from the COA is defining the near-term redesign of different routes and how they interact with each other. We maximize the existing resources, and then we define the capital program as an outcome of what the service looks like. And we feed that over to maintenance and budgets, and we go from there. The main deliverables here are service standards, looking at key performance indicators, existing route profiles to understand what's working, what needs to be improved, looking at different metrics like cost per trip, market analysis, and the demographic data I referenced earlier. And then we want to define alternatives to fixed route. This is a big component, especially in some of the growing South and East County that is not necessarily transit supported from a fixed route bus perspective, but may be more inclined towards on-demand service to feed more regional type bus service. It's very spread out. It's not great connectivity with the roadway network, so you can't just put regular bus service out there and expect it to succeed. So we've got to evaluate what our options are out in those further flung areas, and then also coordinate with projects like THIA's 301 extension and what that might mean for regional express service on that facility. And then the service scenarios, we want to reallocate our service hours to maximize performance. We want to reevaluate some of the historic legacy express bus service that was set up many years ago for a pre-COVID commuter demographic that has changed fundamentally with remote work and most people not going in a full 5 days a week. So we need to have our service respond to those changes and how people are moving around the region. And then again, defining those alternatives to fixed route, determining where the latent demand is, and looking at performance changes and costs, and of course, the Title VI analysis to make sure that we're not disproportionately impacting any one demographic of the community based on income, age, race, et cetera. And those are federal Title VI analysis requirements. So the COA service scenarios, we will have an optimal, which will look at where we need service we can't afford to pay for, a revenue neutral, which will be the redesign and how we shuffle the resources we have and reallocate them most effectively, and then a return of service where we would plan to roll out additional service should more funding become available, whether it's projected increase in our existing revenue streams or future revenues, and where that service would go. So we have something to go to other community partners, whether it's the city or the county, to ask to help fund some of these improvements to kind of get more service out to the community. Public engagement will be a big piece. Those key topics are how we adjust those routes. There will be a aversion to some of this. You will hear that at public comment. The only thing people like less than the way it is changing it. So it's not, some of this won't be fun. Some of it's going to be hard for the public and for us to move forward, but we're going to put forward the best plan we can and make the best recommendations for you all to consider implementing. The methods for this engagement, rider alerts, surveys, QR codes, transfer center in person, and a very limited onboard survey. That's very, very expensive, so we are going to try to do most of that with in-house resources, not outsource that to a consultant. And then public hearings. Prior to any major service changes, we are required to have a public hearing. And then if we trigger 25% more of a change on a specific route, that also can trigger a public hearing. So we'll be working through that with you all. And that brings us to the committee action item. Would you like questions before I read this from anyone?
Any questions? Go ahead, sir.
I just want to point out to the board, and thank you very much, Mr. Willits, on this, that I've brought it up in the past about the routes, and staff has provided me a detailed list of the daily riders and trips per weekday since back in May, I believe, or January actually of this year. I've been looking at it, and there are certain routes that have just absolutely abysmal ridership, and I know that taking on some of these are difficult, but when we continue to fund a route that has an average of 5.5 passengers per hour, I think that that's really challenging when we have many other routes that we could service so many other people in. And when we get to that COA, I will be bringing up those specific routes and hopeful that we can have that conversation of, as he mentioned, in the south part of the county, fixed routes might not necessarily work, and I've been an advocate for some type of flexed route rotator in the Waimama, Sun City to Ruskin area that has more vision on it and more service, and that area is growing, and those are things that I will be advocating for. I understand the need to try and service everybody, but if we're getting such abysmal ridership that is preventing us from service everybody else that does live in the more dense regions, then that's going to be a tough challenge that I believe and I hope that this board can overcome together. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Oh, yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to say thank you, Justin, for your report. As we look at making changes in all, most of our riders are in the city of Tampa. Am I correct?
Yeah,
Majority.
it's a little more balanced than you might suspect. It's
Okay.
just slightly over half.
Okay. Well, before we make changes and all, and you mentioned your public engagement, is that we really go out in the community, that we hold those meetings where that the community can come out and give their input before we make these changes. I would like to be notified when we have these meetings, so as a commissioner and representing District 3, that I can attend those meetings. Because it's very important that we have that input and hear from the community before we begin to make changes, and then we listen to them as we're going to make some of these changes coming forth. Thank you.
And we'll look to work with county staff on any opportunities we can piggyback.
Anyone else?
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Justin, thank you for your report. I'm just curious, if there is an opportunity where you know there's a great need right now, can you just make that change without having to go through a comprehensive analysis for a particular route for improvement purposes?
It depends on what you mean by great need, and if we change something somewhere, there's a high probability that somebody's going to lose service elsewhere.
Oh, okay.
We can shuffle the amount of vehicles and kind of the frequency on some routes, but we don't have much to really play with in that regard as far as, how many buses and operators, because we're maxed at how many vehicles we have and the operators we have. So, and then our revenue hours that are budgeted dictate how much service we can put out there. And right now, we're still not back to pre-COVID levels. So a lot of our routes that are hourly were 30 minutes, and I can speak to that in a later presentation.
Okay.
But that's mostly the answer.
Okay, because the reason why I asked is because the public comments, particularly the one lady who constantly comes every month, and she's very specific about the route that she lives in, and how greatly that's impacting her and employment. So I just, feel like that's something that shouldn't have to cost $450,000. That's something that we should be able to fix from a customer service level.
Yeah, we've worked with her quite a bit and hear her comments, and I've already got staff looking into those connections. One of the main problems is that she lives at the intersection of two hourly routes that used to be every 30 minutes. And making those schedules work in both directions is something that we're trying to tackle for her, but it's a tough area. That's North Dale Mabry and Fletcher and Dale Mabry, and it's just not a ton of transit demand out there, but there used to be enough to support 30-minute service, and we just haven't been get the service level back to that. But we are working on it from the scheduling side.
Thank you for addressing that. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Board Member Myers, go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. And to that comment, is it possible we can work with the county sunshine line when we have less than 5 or 1 or 2, like the young ladies out in the Dale Mabry, to see if the county through the sunshine line can provide that ridership assistance if needed?
Yeah, we're happy to look into that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much. May I have a motion to approve resolution number R2024-0725? We have a member, or strike that, a motion by Board Member Henderson. Do we have a second?
Second.
Board Member, I saw first, Board Member Hartfield. Roll call.
Yes.
Cameron Cepeda, thank you. Director Hartfield,
Yes.
Director Henderson,
Yes.
Director Hobbs,
Yes.
Director King. Director Knight,
Yes.
Director McAlpatrick,
Yes.
Director Myers,
Yes.
Director Schisler,
Yes.
Chair Vieira,
Yes.
Director Williams,
Yes.
Director Woolstall.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much, Board. Next is action item NB, Resolution R2024-07-26, to authorize staff to initiate public involvement activities and conduct a public hearing on proposed fare modifications and authorize enacting fare suspensions and zero fare services at the discretion of the CEO. CEO Drainville, if you don't mind, sir, introducing this item.
Thank you, Chair. So this action item and presentation were received by the Finance and Audit Committee on June 17th. The committee advanced this item to the full board's approval. I would like to note that this action item requests only authorization to initiate public involvement and conduct a public hearing on the proposed fare changes. Staff will conduct a fare and equity analysis through its Title VI program regarding the discontinuation of paper passes in favor of Flamingo e-fares, as well as other potential changes to the existing fare policy. The fare equity analysis will be conducted in accordance with the United States Department of Transportation's Federal Transit Administration Circular 4702.1B, Title VI requirements and guidelines for the Federal Transit Administration recipients. The purpose of the fare equity analysis is to identify if any portion of the proposed fare structure changes may trigger a disparate impact on the minority populations or disproportionate burden on low-income populations. Findings from this effort to include public input will be shared with the board. The efforts will be carefully documented and will be submitted to the FTA as part of the fare equity analysis report. Mr. Woods has a few slides to show on this action item.
All right. Thank you very much. Justin Willits again for the record, and we'll introduce the fare policy change action item. The Title VI requirements for a fare equity analysis is an assessment conducted by a transit provider to determine changes, either increases or decreases, will result in a disparate impact on Title VI populations. A disparate impact is defined as a procedure or practice that appears to be neutral but has the effect of disproportionately excluding or adversely affecting members of a group identified by race, color, or national origin. A disproportionate burden is a procedural practice that appears to be neutral but has the effect of adversely affecting low-income populations greater when compared to other groups, which is also something we look at for service changes, right? That applies here as well as to the FAIR policy. HART is required to comply with all the U.S. DOT's FTA circular, which Mr. Drainville referenced in his intro. So the fair equity analysis framework is identified below. Develop a disparate impact policy and disproportionate burden policy with public participation. Analyze the data, assess the impacts, modify the proposal if necessary, determine if there's a finding of a disparate impact, examine alternatives, and then determine if there is a finding of a disproportionate burden. That will be part of the process that we are going to engage upon. The main goals here, to back up to a high level, is to really study the base fare and fare capping. Last fare change here was over a decade ago. Compare our fares to peer agencies and establish and update fares for new and different types of services. The next major goal is to modernize and simplify the fare payment, and that is the primary reason that we are embarking on this. We want to eliminate the paper fares for a variety of reasons I can elaborate on if needed, but they reduce delays and the level of maintenance work required to operate the system with those dated fare technology and replace those with just cash and the electronic fare payment, which we have established. So we want to improve service consistency. It reduces boarding time. It makes the whole operation a lot more efficient. And then lastly, we want to prepare for uncertainty and special events. We're exploring the reimplementation of the streetcar fare. There's no indication that the city is not going to step up and fund the streetcar appropriately, but we want to be prepared for that. So that is one component of this. And then the second bullet there is to allow for special events and promotional service with the CEO approval, rather than trigger this formal board engagement every time we want to do something that is related to the fare policy. An example would be maybe free service for a Gasparilla or a July 4th special event, or a partnership with the city for a circulator that is supported with their funding. But we want to give the CEO a little bit more leeway to do these special event type things rather than have to bring it to the board every time for approval. And that would be multiple times a year and just be more complicated. So that's part of what we will be moving forward as well. Just so most of you know, the existing fare structure I've alluded to here, the paper column is highlighted that we are planning to eliminate as part of this process. We still accept cash, a variety of different application payments. Flamingo fares is our primary fare payment type, but that also includes digital payment through Apple Pay, Google Wallet, or just your tap debit credit card. Those are all available as well. And the fare capping, for those of you that are new particularly, fare capping, what that means is you can only pay a certain amount for how much service you use before we stop charging you. Basically, if you get on the bus, you tap twice, you pay $4. Next time you tap, you will not pay the rest of the day. So it's 2 taps for $4 a day, and then you're capped. The same logic applies to monthly. Once you hit, I believe it's the $65 threshold within a month, the rest of the month you are free. So that's what we're going to be evaluating, is the $4 in the monthly, but also the base fare of just the $2. So the draft timeline, here we are in July to get your approval to move forward with the rest of the timeline. August to November, we will conduct a fare equity analysis, evaluate impacts, develop mitigation strategies, conduct outreach, come back to the full board with a presentation and update prior to the hearing, and then in December, present the new fare structure, the findings to the HART Board for approval of the fare change with continued public outreach. And then in January, we would like to complete the transition to Flamingo fares, enact the changes, and discontinue the paper passes. And I will stop there for any questions.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from board members? Board Member Myers, anyone else? Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Justin. In your and thank you for your presentation. You mentioned that the paper passes will be discontinued as of 1/1/2025.
That's the timeline we've laid.
Yes. How are we going to notify the public that it's going to be discontinued? Are we going to start now as the board so that the public would know it's coming?
Yeah, that would be part of the process until implementation.
Next
A variety
starting
of
when?
ways, social media, in person, at transit centers, on vehicles.
And
Yeah.
starting when?
As soon as we formally decide, but as soon as next month,
Okay.
I would say.
Thank
And
you.
thank you, and CEO Drainville, go ahead,
Yeah,
sir.
and just for clarification, Commissioner, that was a great question, because that was one of my main directives is make sure the communication goes out there. So once the board approves this public outreach, the communications team will start on the communications to the public on this.
Thank you. Any, yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Yes. Thanks again, Mr. Willis, for your presentation. The public outreach notification regarding the paper, in my opinion, I believe that that is the very specific focus that you should have. When they hand their paper, they need to receive something constantly for a certain period of time, reminding them that this is going away. Because I feel as though once we take it away, that's when the public comment would come, and they would be very upset that the paper no longer exists. They are the people that have to know, and they most likely are not on social media. So that outreach has to be hand to hand, and that is my recommendation. Every time, for a certain period of time, that they receive some sort of little card, not a flyer, nothing big, but something that lets them know that they are, that this is going away and the effective date.
I agree.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Okay. May I have a motion to approve Resolution R2024-07-26? We have a motion, I don't, who made that? Was it? Oh, I'm sorry. Board Member Henderson, pardon me. There you go. And seconded by Board Member Myers. I heard a lot of go-forwards, but go ahead.
Director Cameron Cepeda,
Yes.
Director Hartfield,
Yes.
Director Henderson,
Yes.
Director Hobbs,
Yes.
Director King, Director Knight,
Yes.
Director McAlpatrick,
Yes.
Director Myers,
Yes.
Director Schisler,
Yes.
Chair Viera.
Yes.
Director Williams,
Yes.
Director Wallstor.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. And the last action item is Resolution R2024-07-27, certifying the proposed ad valorem tax millage rate for the fiscal year 2025 budget. CEO Drainville, if you don't mind, sir, introducing the item.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the annual certification of the proposed ad valorem tax millage rate for the FY 2025 budget. Pursuant to Florida Statute 200.065, HART has 35 days from receipt of the certified property value to advise the property appraiser of its prior year millage rate, its current year proposed millage rate, its current year rollback rate, and the date, time, and place which the public hearing will be held to consider the tentative millage rate and the tentative budget. This is pursuant to Florida State Statute 129.03. Ms. Melanie Williams, Director of Budget and Grants, has a presentation to the board this morning.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning, ma'am.
Members of the board and Mr. Drainville. Again, my name is Melanie Williams, Director of Budgets and Grants. And today I represent the fiscal year 2025 proposed ad valorem tax millage rate. This presentation will include an overview of the historical and proposed budgeted ad valorem revenue, the data to certify to the property appraiser, the next steps to adopt the millage rate in the annual budget, and finally, the board resolution you will act on today. Okay, so this chart provides a 10-year comparison of the millage and ad valorem revenues to be levied from the fiscal year 2016 to fiscal year 2025. Focusing on FY 2025, Based on the proposed millage rate of 0.5 mils, it is estimated that $81,806,798 of revenue would be generated. By statute, HART can only budget at 95% of the ad valorem proceeds. Therefore, our FY 2025 ad valorem budget is expected to be $77,706,458. This represents a $4.8 million or 6.6 increase over FY 2024. This next slide shows the data to certify to the property appraiser. First, the prior year millage for FY 2024 is 0.5. The proposed millage rate for FY 2025 is 0.5. The proposed millage rate of 0.5 is 4.62% above the rollback rate of 0.4779. Now, the rollback rate is a tax rate that produces the same amount of tax dollars as the previous year. This is calculation by the Florida statute. The public hearing is to approve the tentative millage rate and tentative budget is scheduled for September 9th, 2024 at 5:30 p.m. at HART. The next slide shows the next steps. So on July 17th, we will certify taxable values to the property appraiser. We provide prior year and current year proposed millage rate, provide current year rollback rate, announce the date, time, and location of public hearings. And then on September 9th, we'll hold first public hearing, adopt the tentative FY 25 millage rate and proposed budget. And then finally, on September 23rd, we will hold the second and the final public hearing, and then adopt the FY 25 millage rate and annual budget. The next is the board resolution to request the board to approve the action item and resolution of certifying the proposed ad valorem tax millage rate for the fiscal year 2025 budget. And that concludes my presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions or comments.
Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate you. Any questions? Yes, sir, Board Member Hartfield.
So thank you for your presentation this morning. A couple questions for you. If our proposed millage rate did not increase, but we have increased revenue, I'm assuming that's based on the fact that property values have gone up.
Yes, that's based on the taxable property value, yes.
What happens, and this is as much a question for you, Ms. Williams, as the CEO, what happens if property values start to decrease? What's the long-term contingency plan?
So Director Hartfield, that's a great question, and one I've been thinking about for a long time, knowing that eventually the ad valorem is going to plateau as the expenditures increase. So that's why, we started this ad hoc committee to look where we can find internal revenue sources, no matter what that is. But worst case scenario, if the ad valorem starts to plateau and expenditures go up, for example, healthcare this year. We started off thinking it's going to be a 10% increase, or it's 26%. We're negotiating that down, but there'd be, there most likely be a cut in service. Possibly layoffs, cut in service. We keep in mind we are not where we were pre-COVID. We're at 75% of that service level, and expenditures keep going up, and the revenues have slowly dwindling down, plateauing down. So, great question. It's not been on my mind, it's on staff's mind, so we're coming up with strategies. And definitely, if anything, something like that would come, we would definitely communicate that out in a lot of time to know this is where we are, this is where HART is, and this is what the service level is going to look in the future.
Thank you.
Anything else, sir? Director Hartfield, Director Wilson, go ahead, sir.
I just wanted to point out to my colleagues that this is the lowest projected percent increase in the past 10 years, if you saw that chart that she put up. And I think that that's an important indicator as we see a stifling of the housing market and property values. The average sale of a home has decreased dramatically. It's now the lowest, I think, in 4 or 5 years in Hillsborough County was reported recently. So all variables to consider. We've stayed stagnant at a half millage rate, and I don't foresee a reason for that to change. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Board Member Myers, go ahead, ma'am.
Move for approval.
Yes, ma'am. Do we have a second? Second by Board Member Schisler. Any discussion? If not, a roll call, please.
Director Cameron-Sapria.
Yes, yes.
Director Hartfield.
Yes.
Director Henderson.
Yes.
Director Hobbs.
Yes.
Director Knight.
Yes.
Director McAlpatrick.
Yes.
Director Myers.
Yes.
Director Schisler.
Yes.
Chair Viera.
Yes.
Director Williams.
Yes.
Director Wallstall.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. Next, we move forward to presentations. I don't think we'll run here, but for the record, I need to leave here by around 12:45. I think we'll be fine, but just FYI. The first is on the updated financial model. Mr. Drainville, please introduce the presentation, sir.
Thank you, Chair. So in the past, HART Board received reports on the financial model. Today, Ms. Sharon Green with InfoStrategies will share the recent changes to the model and highlight key findings. Ms. Sharon Green is a founding partner in InfoStrategies. She's been at the forefront of innovation in transportation and infrastructure development and finance for more than 45 years. Sharon is a specialist in transportation economics, infrastructure finance, and transportation planning with experience throughout the U.S. and abroad.
Good morning, everyone. While the presentation is being pulled up, I've seen many of you in little pictures for a number of years now, and I have been involved with the HART financial model since pre-COVID. And so I know you by your numbers, I know you by your growth rates, and every question and every comment from behind is something that we have had to look at in the model. It's a real responsibility to do a financial model for an agency, really. It's something that some of you have met Amanda Vandegrift, who was here previously doing the presentations, and John Ravenel, who is going to be assuming the major responsibility for the model going forward. But it is a real responsibility. We don't want to give you projections that are too optimistic or too pessimistic. And so when you look at what's happening on the cost front, you don't want to underestimate the growth of costs, and you don't want to overestimate the growth of revenues. And so every question that has been asked about the growth rate in the ad valorem or the increase in operating costs is something that we take to heart and look at in the model. And we try to give you the most realistic picture going forward. And so with that, thank you, Chair Vieira and members of the board, and thank you, CEO Drainville and CFO Ms. Kirk, who have been indispensable to us. And a number of my staff have been involved with Finance Committee Chair Schisler for a while now. And so I think that some of you have heard the previous presentations about the financial model, and I hope to give you a realistic picture going forward here. I'm going to cover some of the recent changes since the model was last reported to you, discuss what is meant by a baseline or status quo model, what are some of the findings, and one thing that we're doing now is trying to transition the model from InfoStrategies to HART staff so that you will be able to look at analyses going forward. I commend the HART Board for taking on some very hard challenges over the past year in particular. This model is providing much better news than the last time the presentations were made to you, where we were looking at a fiscal cliff coming on the operating side within the next 2 years. HART has undertaken the hard job of really looking seriously at the growth in the O&M costs and contained O&M costs. Look seriously at the levels of service and holding service to status quo, despite a lot of demands for increasing service. So this budget looks at incorporating the 25 projected operating and capital budgets, future year projections, the highest priority capital project, which is the heavy maintenance facility, and trying to move forward with getting some of the heavy maintenance facility, the funding in place for that. We're assisted by the fact that some of the revenues came in higher than were anticipated last year. And that's also helped by the fact that we estimate conservatively on the revenue side. And so when the revenues come in higher, that's good. We've left a margin in there for costs to come in higher and revenues to come in lower. You may remember that FDOT did a study of HART and looked at how you compare to your peers. Well, you operate according to their conclusions and everything that we have seen over the years. You operate very efficiently, despite being significantly underfunded relative to your peer agencies in Florida and elsewhere. The other major finding from the HART study, from the study of HART by FDOT, was that the heavy maintenance facility is not going to last forever here. We're living on last legs with respect to the maintenance facility. You can't accommodate future expansion of the fleet. It's not in a state of good repair. Many of the facilities in there are obsolete. I don't have to tell you, you know that better than anyone else, and you can tell FDOT that as well. So some of the good news. Farebox revenue has come in higher than previously assumed. The ad valorem tax revenues, which is going to the question of what do we do if the ad valorem comes in lower. We start very conservatively estimating ad valorem tax rate growth, and we keep with a 5%, 0.5 millage rate, but we only grow the ad valorem tax at 4% a year, which is a conservative way to go forward. Last year, the growth rate in the ad valorem was 6%. The prior year was 11%, and the year before that was 15%. So I think that confirms very seriously the statement about what's happening with the ad valorem property tax. The rate is going down in terms of growth, and that's reflecting interest rates across the country in terms of what it costs to get a mortgage, what it costs to construct new housing stock, what's happening in the economy generally. So we try to incorporate conservative projections going forward. Another factor is the growth in operating costs, and your CEO has worked very closely with the operating team to make sure that the operating cost growth is contained. The operating cost growth in the model is 3.5% and going forward. Very significant containment of operating costs. So what is a scenario that is called status quo? Status quo scenario means that we're keeping with not building back up to pre-COVID service, that we are keeping the service as status quo. There is no growth in this model in terms of the levels of service. And the questions that some of the board members asked about, what's our margin here for shifting between increasing service in this area versus another area? Our degrees of freedom are very, very small. We're dealing with a balanced situation here in terms of providing service within a status quo scenario. We have no room for growth in service in this model. We also don't have room in here for adding money for state of good repair. We don't have costs to return to pre-COVID levels of service. And as you're going to hear from Scott, Justin in the next presentation, we're not returning to pre-COVID service levels. We need about $20 million more a year to do so, and there is no money in here for that. And so we're dealing with a very constrained situation. There was another question that the board raised about bus shelters. There's no money in here for an expanded bus shelter program. So status quo means just that. Status quo. And we're not funding the extension of the streetcar model, of the streetcar within this model. The resources are just not there. So this is good news but it's also mixed news, that unless there are more funds available to us, we're very constrained. This model assumes that there's federal discretionary money coming in, and if it does not come in, I think you can see on this slide that we're in a shortfall situation. We depend on that federal discretionary money coming in. Well, some of the grant awards that were just recently announced, you didn't get funding, and there was no funding in there for the heavy maintenance facility. Going to have to look at finding a way to move forward and leverage the funds that you do have in a way that will help get the maintenance facility moving and keep it moving. So the key findings, the good news is that passenger fares are higher, ad valorem came in higher, federal operating money came in higher, and operating costs growth slowed. That's all excellent news, and the board is really to be commended for an excellent job in balancing very difficult situation. We're not facing a fiscal cliff now. If HART continues to receive operating revenues and experiences a containment on its operating cost growth, this will allow HART to fund existing services and some of its most critical capital costs in the '25 budget. But without supplementary money, we're not in a position to take on anything beyond the status quo. And the capital projects are going to have to wait until we can get federal money and leverage that money through state grants in particular and through partnerships. What's the direction for the near term? To continue to align costs and revenues, to seek new partnerships and expand those that are existing, to work with FDOT, to work with FTA to try to leverage the grants that you have and repurpose them. Those are the short-term ideas that offer the best promise. On the long term, HART will have to look towards additional revenue sources or securing some new sources of funding and doing a much more active job than you even do now in leveraging new sources of money, maximizing the leverage that they can provide, looking through partnerships, looking through working directly with FDOT and the resources that FDOT and the TPO can bring to bear for you. I mentioned that we were transitioning the financial model to HART staff, and we started the model training on June 17th, and the main participants in the model training are Justin Willits, Melanie, and Nicholas Goldborn, and Ms. Kirk, and that training will help you to be able to look at scenario testing. And I think models can be a very important thing, but I don't, even as someone who does a lot of modeling, I don't rely on the models. The models are only as good as the assumptions that are used to test it. And we should be prepared for looking at scenarios that are not just status quo. We look at scenarios. What leverage do we have in here for how bad things can get or how good things can get? And so the model is a useful tool in that direction. I would personally like to thank Ms. Kirk for all of her support over this long period of developing the model with HART. And thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate your remarks. Any questions or comments from board members or Wilson?
Go ahead.
Yes, I just want to thank you for your presentation, and especially the good news regarding the cliff. Please tell Amanda good luck in her future. Thank you for her efforts. She's worked very closely with this board for
I'm just joking, that's all.
3 or 4 years. But thank you, thank you for the news, and the model does work if with the right inputs and the right expectations. So thank you very much for a good product.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Board Member Wilson, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, and you already thanked. I've resisted commenting too much about the past 2 years just because I don't want to create panic in the community. But now that you've announced this, I mean, let's just have the honest conversation. I see some members of the public that stayed behind. I'm glad you're still here. We were going to be bankrupt
You were.
We were going to be bankrupt. And the state was imminent to step in and close this organization down. So you want to talk about bonuses or protecting people's jobs, Title VI's, disproportionately affecting communities? No HART would be the most significant disproportionate effect to those communities that we're referencing. And it took a lot of grit and boldness because not many people, executives like you two that stayed behind, would have stayed through that.
Yeah.
And it was imminent. And I can't say that enough while emotions are roaring, that I have resisted really commenting on it, but we were there and it was going to happen. And there have been frank conversations with me that if they didn't decide to trust CEO Drainsville as much as he was able to establish those relationships, they would have moved forward. And there would be no HART. We would be having conversations about how we're winding the organization down. It took a lot of hard work, and I could not be sincerely more proud of you because this is the one feeder that really keeps people out of pure poverty. And it was there due to gross mismanagement. And I'm willing to say that now that we have articulated that you have reached a plateau of stability at least, and I am very grateful for the two of you to stick through because I'm not a transit expert. I know very little about transit, and it does take qualified personnel to be in charge of making those decisions, and I'm very proud and thankful to the two of you and everybody else that worked so hard on your team to reach this point. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Director Hartfield.
So, CEO Drainsville and the team, definitely thank you for the work that you've been able to facilitate to the board as well, and to Commissioner Wastel, thank you for your passionate comments. For me, as I look at the key findings as a business owner and as a practitioner, I'm hard pressed to be in a good position to say, okay, how do we move forward? Because basically you said do nothing and try to survive. As a business owner, and I would think for-profit, nonprofit, you would always strive to increase revenue and decrease expenses. In our case, we're saying, just be still, don't do anything, stay with the status quo, and hope that you find additional funding out there. For me, as I look at a strategy for the present and long term, that's upsetting. So I think from a strategic standpoint, understanding where additional revenue comes from, because our ability to decrease expenses, that's not going to happen. We've had what we thought was going to be maybe a 10% increase in insurance costs. It ended up being 26%. There's no way that the expenses that are directly related to operating this organization is going to decrease over the next 3 to 5 years. That's not going to happen. So the only way out is to either stay with the status quo, which catches up with you after a period of time. If you're telling me don't do anything, to stay with the status quo, that's going to catch up with you at some point, right?
It will.
So if we can't increase revenue, then we're right back in the same place. So I believe that we're still at a point where we're speaking about a fiscal cliff. So I don't want to paint a gloom and doom picture, but I do think that the organization needs bipartisan support if we're going to move this organization forward. And we have to find diversified revenue streams to not only maintain the status quo, but to grow the organization.
Thank you, sir. Board Member Schisler.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. To your point, Mr. Hartfield, that your point is well taken. I think what she's trying to say is that at this point, we're stable, but that there are activities that are being undertaken by this board to do just that. Future revenues, we're meeting with it's a long-term process. It's not something we're going to be able to flip on a dime, but I know that the administration is very focused on this. There's another meeting after this meeting to start the long-term efforts towards that. So your point's well taken. Yes, there is no cliff right now, but there is no growth either. And we're not going to get any better. We're just going to stay the way we are. And while that's okay, that's not good enough for our citizenry. And this is where we're moving forward. We're looking for ways to move forward with that. Whatever that is, we don't know yet. We're still working towards it. But rest assured that I don't believe the administration is riding on their laurels and just sitting there waiting for the next windfall, because unless we go out and make it, it's not going to happen. To your point about operating it as a business, which is what we end up having to do. So just so that for the new kids on the block, there's stuff in process, and we're cognizant of that. And with the finance committee, we sweat blood on this every month when we get together, figure out what's going to happen next and where we're going to go. But thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay, and thank you, ma'am. I'll say something really briefly, if I may, which is, that's obviously great news about the fiscal cliff, and some of the things that have been said, including by Board Member Wosel, about the leadership of Scott Drainville and of everybody in HART, I think is really on board, but also want to give this board kudos, because, we went through a very controversial change in CEO, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, that everybody here handled it like a class act. I mean that, like a situation like that could have been used for politics by either side. I'm not, whatever, and nobody did. Nobody did, and everybody was stellar in it. It goes without saying. And we do have to look at also funding from other sources. I know the CRA, I motioned for us to take a look at bus shelters, bus shelter improvements in CRA areas. People talk about the streetcar, the City of Tampa CRA. The way that I look at that, I mean, our downtown CRA would have been one of the great ways to do it. Well, we spent all the money until 2028 on many things, including many things that I voted against in favor of that. So I think that's important. But, and did I see your hand? Go ahead, sir.
And again, great presentation. And we had a lot of the board when we didn't go national search and selected CEO Drainville, and it's all good. But just wanted to know that even with the financial things and on auditing and financing, some of the things and obstacles we have to go through, but it's in the back of the mind, and always, like we said in the meeting earlier, and I want to get out of line, that have the confidence in you, but also to address. And like we say, we don't want to go no more months on with the drivers and the things that are going on, but have the confidence in you that regardless what it is, that we come to some type of closure on that, because with all these other things happening, they are a big part of this puzzle coming together. And from a business person and everything, also from a big company such as Tico, that we did things. So I know it's a lot of things, but somehow with what's going on, that we listen, that we do some things collectively together to address that issue, because it's a big part, and they are a big part of making this work in a productive way. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, now we move forward to the, and thank you very much, ma'am. We appreciate you. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. I was just wondering, Ms. Green, right?
Yes.
Can you give us are we classified the same way like the city is with our credit rating and financial standing? How are we currently being graded? Can you talk about that?
Yes, but I'll also have Ms. Kirk answer, because you don't issue any debt, and so you don't have any rating, but I'll let Ms. Kirk comment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good morning, Board, and to Mr. Drainville. I think he's looking to me to answer this question. We do not have a credit rating.
Okay.
We have never issued debt, and we've never presented to credit rating agencies.
Okay. But we do have reserves of $18 million, correct, at least?
At least.
Okay.
Yeah, we have reserves currently of $36 million. And of course, we have the reserve to prepare for the rainy day that she's talking about today. Yes, but we don't have a rating.
I have one more question since you said that. Is there a specific determination of how much funding we need in reserves for a rainy day? Like, has there been an example of that before? How much money we've used in a rainy day situation?
So I can say, we're required to have a 90-day reserve of about 27 million.
Okay.
We have about 36 million, because of the efficiencies we made when that rainy day comes, instead of making layoffs or cutting service. But we've been in past years, our reserves have been about 2 million. So when it comes to the last 6 years I've been here, we've probably been in the best situation when it comes to financially, when you look at the reserves, so.
Okay,
Ms.
and do
Kirk?
we have those reserves because of the COVID funding we received?
Well, the reserves are coming, if I can answer, the reserves are coming from ad valorem. But understand, just as someone said today, over the last 3.5 years, we had $103 million of COVID relief. We will not get that anymore. For fiscal year '24, we budgeted $18 million. We won't have that. So we have to use $18 million of that just to balance our budget and moving forward. If you use that same scenario, 18 million every year, in a few years, you'll be right back to where Commissioner Wastow said. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate.
Ms. Kirk,
this
don't
feedback.
leave.
Thank you, ma'am. Go ahead.
I'm here for moral support.
I just, while we're over the fiscal cliff and we're talking about COVID dollars, those were one-time federal dollars.
Yes.
But I would love, and be prepared if a motion is made in new business, I will be asking for an accounting of all of the expenditures of COVID dollars. And the reason I will ask for that is it is my belief that prior leadership utilized one-time federal money to create permanent increases on our bottom line operating expenses. And if that is true, it will go more to the point of how we handle certain claims that are being made about one-time COVID dollars that no longer exist, and how they've become a permanent burden on the bottom line operating costs of the organization HART. So if we have that list, I will likely be asking for it, not today, but to be presented to us, because I think that that's a significant variable for everybody to see. Thank you.
And I just want to add that next month in August, we will have 2 presentations on the fiscal year '25 budget, and Mr. Drainville will be more than happy to answer any questions you have about that budget at that time.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay. I'm sorry, Director Hartfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we mentioned that our internal staff are being trained on this financial modeling. Is our lobbyist being trained as well?
Maybe not on the model, but definitely in preparation for what's going to happen at the federal level.
Okay.
I
Okay.
would say.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask, maybe this is not the appropriate place, that we consider having a strategy meeting of the board and considering a state of emergency and identifying a pending fiscal cliff for the organization.
I'd ask if you don't mind that you put that in new business, because it'll probably lead to a whole discussion. I want to be wary of time, so. But yeah, we can make that. Anyone else? Okay. Okay. Oh, okay. Last presentation of the day is service levels captured in the fiscal year 2025 budget. Mr. Drainville, you have the floor.
So as part of the development of the organizational budget, staff reviews the service levels. This is one of the major components of the budget, and Mr. Willis will share the service level assumptions for the board's review and comment.
Morning again, Justin Willits for the record. I'll keep this brief as I know we're a little bit behind. But as I alluded to, you'll hear a lot of us talk about the pre-COVID service level and then what we have out there today. And we really, when we talk about our service levels, we generally talk about weekday, because that's when the most of our demand occurs, most traffic, most ridership. And we say We measure our service levels in the amount of vehicles we put on the street. We used to be at 132, now we're at 101. And the number of hours those vehicles are letting people get on and off. And that's revenue hours. We're at 70% of the 100% we used to be at in March of 2020. So this first map, and this is the education piece, is what our service levels were in March of 2020 going into that time period. The routes are color-coded by frequency. Green is the best, 15 minutes. Light blue is 20 minutes. Dark blue is 30. And then purple and red are 60 minutes, including local service and express service. And are we good now? Sorry. So this is what you see generally throughout the city of Tampa, and just outside of the boundary there is a sea of blue and green, right? We had 15 to 30-minute service on almost all of the routes. And that was a product of the last COA that was done in 2017 and 2018 that set up this service level the way it was. So watch that green and blue change. If I can actually adjust the slide, sorry. But here's the table that demonstrates what I just described at 75%. Number of vehicles up top, number of revenue hours, and the cost of that service based on our most recent cost per hour. And then those are the routes at the very bottom that don't correspond to the frequency or the level of service they had in March of 2020. And now you see our current service level. A lot of that blue and green is now purple and in the core of our service area. So we are not providing a level of service that can really attract the ridership back. So that 75% service level corresponds pretty closely to the amount of ridership that's come back. So we know that there is a demand out there for more bus service. The COA is going to help us evaluate where the best bang for our buck is to make slight improvements here and there or tweak routes and that sort of thing. But our real goal is to get back to where it's blue and green throughout the core of the service area where we have the best chance at attracting the most ridership. And that is July, that is current. And then what we have budgeted for this year is only very modest improvements to just 3 different routes, and then improvements for on-time performance purposes, because we're basically operating the same level of service at a much more congested place. One of the big changes I think most of you all feel is the congestion in the afternoon hour, which is our main focus for scheduling and trying to keep service on time. It's come back more than it was pre-pandemic, and that's really tricky for us on the scheduling and planning side, so that's part of the work that we do, and we'll look at with the COA. So this is for fiscal year 2025 compared to March of 2020. You can see the number of weekday revenue hours is 1,277. That would get us to about 78.5%, up from 75, with just those very few frequency improvements that I've referenced. So in totality, this is, I'm sorry, there's something a little hidden here. So for the FY25 service budget, revenue miles are just over 7 million. Revenue hours are 567,000. The ridership projected is 12.5 million. For paratransit, it is 2.2 million revenue miles, 153,000 revenue hours, 278,000 riders. For streetcar, revenue miles are 132,000. Revenue hours are 25,000. Ridership is almost 1.6 million. It will be another banner year for the streetcar. And then the total ridership, the total miles, hours, and ridership are 9.4 million, 746,000, and then 14.3 million ridership. That concludes the service levels component of the budget presentation. Sorry, that took longer than I was hoping.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate you. Any questions? Okay. Thank you, sir. We really appreciate you. Oh, yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Oh,
Chair
Mr.
Vera.
Willist, we
Mr.
have one
Willits.
question.
I think I'm even more curious looking at this. Thank you for your presentation, by the way. Thank you. You always provide us with good data. But after Mr. Wassel's request of the COVID dollars and looking at this analysis, is there any way to correlate the ridership, the miles, and revenue in comparison to how we spent the dollars? Because there isn't much difference. I mean, maybe a million, maybe that's significant, a number of miles that we've increased over 24 to 25 when we got the dollars. So I'm just saying a lot here, but if you could look at the comparison of when we got those dollars, how we utilize those in the impact to the ridership, it just a high-level glance, it does not appear as significant, but it does feel as though it is impacting the community much more than I would have imagined based on what I see here and how we utilize those dollars.
So that's really a budget question for how that money was allocated each year and where exactly it went, whether it was service or capital, and how it rolled out each year. So I would hesitate to answer that on the fly.
I'm not looking for an answer today, but once you look at the dollars and how they're allocated, how they were utilized, and then correlate that to, maybe the two of you could look at how it impacted the ridership, because when I looked at, if you go back a few pages, and I look at the 22 actual, 23 actual compared to 24, and I look at the $103 million, there's not much difference from 65 to 68. If I look at the revenue miles, fixed route, if I just go down to all HART, 87, 8.7 to 8.9. Revenue miles, 684,705. I'm just looking at that high level. There's not much of a difference. And then when I look at the dollars that were granted, is there a way to correlate how there was that much of an impact from the number of 15, 20, 15, 30, 60-minute routes in comparison to how the dollars were utilized? So I guess I'm expanding the request that Wassel made in comparison to how it's impacting the community as much when I look at the proposed service in comparison to how we utilize the dollars.
If I can just respond, our next presentation is August the 5th.
Okay.
And it will be a presentation on the fiscal year 25 budget. We will certainly take these comments, and with the CEO's approval, we'll make a few slides to address the questions that are raised today.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Willis. Thanks, Ms. Kirk.
If I could just add to that. Just for context, so think about pre-COVID, where we were service levels, we're at the same ridership, or even going to increase, proposed increases in ridership where we are today, with 35 buses less on the road. So think about 35 buses less, and the number of operators that actually would cost HART to operate that service. So that's why when you hear us say, if we were trying to get back to that pre-COVID service, it would be a cost of between $22 and $25 million just to get us back to that. So just the context, we're running efficiently, we're getting the ridership, but we're doing it with 35 less buses on the road.
Yes, sir.
One additional comment, COVID money started coming in 2020, I believe. So this is a very small snapshot as to the entire picture. So there's an awful lot. And as well, the COVID monies, I know I deal with them with other organizations. They had to be specifically identified before they were reimbursed. So there's a lot of paperwork and trails and audit trails that do exist. So we utilized the last 18 million last year, I believe it was, or this year, this current fiscal year, out of all that. So yeah, keep in mind it goes back to 2020 when these monies started coming in.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. We appreciate you. Okay, next we move on to our CEO's report. Go ahead, sir.
All right, I'll make this really brief. So for legislative and grant updates, so the following FDOT grants will be awarded this month: Flamingo Fares Enhancement and Limited Use Cards. Project total is $488,722, and this is 100% state funded. Seal coating project and parking rides, project total is $337,592. We have a bus stop rehab and renovation and BTI improvements for a project total of just under $1.6 million, and the 5310 operating customer choice voucher at $1.5 million. Grant agreements have been signed by myself and are awaiting the final execution of the FDOT notices we sent to the relevant directors once executed, followed by the general ledger expense account numbers. On the federal side, as I reported in previous months, we did submit an application for the Grays Grant for the Phase 1 of the heavy maintenance facility rebuild. Unfortunately, HART was not awarded that recipient this year. HART was also unsuccessful in its applications for bus and bus facilities and low no emissions grants. But on Thursday morning, the announcement was made for the House Appropriations Committee, approved a list of community projects to receive funding for FY25. And HART thanks U.S. Representative Kathy Castor for her continued support of HART operational capital needs. With her championship, HART's application for funding for the HOP operations facility and resiliency improvements was confirmed in the amount of $850,000. Board-related, HART Employee Town Hall was held on Tuesday, June 18th at the 21st Operations Break Room. The guest speaker of the HART Board was the HART Board Chairperson, Louis Vieira. Other board members in attendance were City of Temple Tenants Councilman Gil Schisler, HART Board Secretary Mary Williams, and HART Board Member Gary Hartfield. The Town Hall provides a valuable opportunity for the employees to come together as a team, engage in open dialogue, and address any questions and concerns they might have. The meeting and the minutes from the Town Hall are available upon request. On the finance side, all-day workshop was held on Wednesday, June 26th with the financial and operations, budgets, and grant staff. The purpose of the workshop was to address the corrective action plan included in the report for the FY23 audit. I'm pleased to announce that HART earned 2 prestigious awards from the Government Finance Officers Association for our FY24 financial and budgetary practices. We received a Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting and the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. The Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting is awarded to the state and local governments that produce annual comprehensive financial reports that go beyond the minimum requirements and generally accepted accounting principles. The award emphasizes our commitment to transparency and full disclosure in financial reporting. Our finance team has received this award for 12 consecutive years and 16 years in total. The Distinguished Budget Presentation Award is given to the governments that prepare budget documents of its highest quality, reflecting both the guidelines established by the National Advisory Council on State and Local Budgeting and GFOA's best practices on budgeting. This is the 7th time HART has received this award, and it marks the first time in recent years. These achievements are a testament of the hard work and expertise of our finance and budget and grants teams. Your dedication ensures that our financial statements and budget documents are reliable, understandable, and useful for everyone. So congratulations, your efforts not only enhance our organization's reputation, but also build a greater trust within the community. And administrative updates, the Human Resources team initiated several series of informational sessions for various groups of employees at all HART facilities. The Human Resources staff are scheduled to be on site and available for all employees who need any clarifications or would like to address any HR-related matters. And then lastly, there's a ride-along. Staff is making arrangements and will engage board members for ride-alongs. In response to Commissioner Meyer's request, staff will be scheduling a trip along 21st Avenue corridor to see the bus stop placement and shelter locations. We also are inviting staff from the TPO and the City of Tampa to join us on this ride-along. A few additional dates for other ride-along opportunities will be communicated to the board members as dates are identified. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, sir. For my report, I was going to say some remarks, but I'm not going to, so there you go. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Again, yes, on the ride-along, does that also include like that north side or Del Mary Waters area, the customer?
We can incorporate whatever corridors you want, we can incorporate that.
I'd like to be involved.
Okay.
Just let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay,
Mr.
next we
Chair.
have, I'm sorry,
Sure.
my bad.
With that ride along, I know I requested it. We need to make it happen within the 30 days, once everybody's schedule. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much. Next, for HART Board Committee reports, they're included under Section 14. For reports from HART Board representatives, they are in Section 15. Information reports are in Section 16. Is there any old business? I know there is new business, so that's why I didn't make any remarks, because I know we're going to have some motions made, and I want to have time for that. So who here, I know Board Member Myers, and I know Board Member Hartfield, Board Member Wosel. Okay, go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. I'd like to hear from legal counsel on my comments earlier.
Yes, I was able to identify that David Adams is representing HART in this matter. I am in the process of scheduling a meeting with him this week, possibly by Friday, to be able to get more information. That being said, procedurally, where this case is, a grievance was filed June 10th. Through that process, there's an obligation to choose an arbitrator, that they're in the process of choosing the arbitrator for that matter. As they choose the arbitrator, they will go forward on their hearing process. That process can take approximately 3 to 6 months. That being said, what I'm going to try and identify after my conversation with Mr. Adams is to get more information about where things are and more specifically what is happening. What I would prefer not to do at this time is get into any further discussion on this matter since there's a pending arbitration, but allow me that opportunity to find out additional information and to brief members individually. And if appropriate, allow myself as board counsel along with in-house counsel to seek an opportunity for a closed session on this matter. I don't know if there is that opportunity. I have to research it since it's not traditional litigation, but I would like that opportunity to look at that. And if that is the case, given the conversations and it's appropriate, I would have the authority under Florida statute to make a request for a closed session. So that's where I am procedurally right now.
Thank you. My follow-up, and I'm going to go ahead and make a motion because I think we can reconcile this in 90 days. 6 months is just a little too long. So I move that the contract negotiation or litigation between the employees and HART be resolved within 90 days.
I do need to make a comment on that. I don't think that we can commit that it's done within 90 days because there's an arbitrator involved. What I can have you ask, and what I can ask our outside litigation counsel to do, is do everything necessary to get that before an arbitrator for a decision point within that period of time.
I understand that, but this is the board. We can demand, and this is a demand, because this has been before us, I know for the past 5 months at least, the same issue, that we could have taken the necessary steps. And we know that Adams has helped us in the past with Ms. LeGrand situation. So we're asking that, I'm asking to make this a priority.
Understood.
So 90 days is my motion.
Understood.
Okay, that's my motion. Because, really, the employees don't need to keep coming back to this board. We need to make this a priority, bring it to fruition. It's a closed case, and that they can move on. If they're going to be paid, they will be paid. If they're not, they need to know that, and this board need to know what is going to happen. And waiting 6 months is just, I'm not going to accept 6 months. That's just me as a board member.
I understand exactly what you're saying. The only reason I made that comment is those of us who are in the litigation world never like to put a judge in position of demanding those things of them. But I do think that what I hear you saying should be very well expressed both to Mr. Adams as I meet with him this week, as well as making sure the scheduling happens, whatever can happen quickly.
If we need to have Mr. Adams come before this board, so he understands where the HART Board is coming from, so that he can take the position, what we need to get this resolved. That's all I'm saying.
Understood.
Okay? Thank you so much.
Board Member Wosel, go ahead, sir.
For that specific issue, we just got notification that we're finally outside of potential bankruptcy, and there's so many variables that need to be considered. What we're talking about, if we approve certain things, how may that financially impact the organization and bring us back into the red, which of course would mean absolutely no jobs for anybody if we don't show good stewardship, good fiscal stewardship of this organization. And when we're talking about the legal state of a contract, it's fine if we ask for it to be a priority, but to issue demands to the legal system, that sometimes does not bode well. So I just want, if we're issuing a demand, then I'm a no vote. If we're just asking for it to be, if at all possible, prioritized, then I could support that. But there's so many financial variables that this board needs to be very intentional about, that we can't rush that, so.
Thank you. Board Member Knight.
Yes, and thank you. Well said, and I think what that issue is, the money that's supposed to be for this. If it deems that, however, through what Commissioner asking, then so be it. But I think that they're not asking for more money or whatever. It was money for COVID. And if some of that money that they need to right what was wrong, then it should be there anyway. You know, it should be. So it's not like we don't want HART to bankrupt, but we want this to come to a closure. And whatever needs to happen,
Thank you, sir. Board Member McAlpatrick. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, and thank you, Ms. Myers, for your comments on kind of the urgency, and obviously hearing the public comment and being relatively new to this, I can certainly sense the urgency of wanting to deal with it. But to kind of follow up on Ms. Mandel's comments and Mr. Wurstel's comments, the litigation process itself is not one you can make those demands, and we can't, I don't think this board can make a demand like that on a process that the litigants don't dictate specifically how that operates. I can speak from my own personal experience that there are procedures, there are rules that have to be followed, and litigants can't simply dictate that a demand like that be made. So to the extent the motion is to require something to be resolved in a certain period of time, I think would be an impossibility. I think Mr. Wurstel kind of made an appropriate comment that if the request here is to convey that this is of the utmost importance, which it is, and that every effort be made to advance the case as quickly as possible, that's appropriate, but I don't think there's a way that this board or anyone can dictate the time period on when that comes to a conclusion as a practical matter.
Any further comments? Yes, ma'am, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry, and Board, who was first? I don't want to.
I don't know.
It's fine. Go ahead.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank
Board
you.
Member Williams.
For our attorney, you said that David Adams is representing HART on this matter, and that the grievance was filed on June 10th, 35 days ago. So what has happened in the past 35 days? Have you found anything out besides a name? That's the only thing that was provided when you presented earlier.
I'm going to meet with Mr. Adams this week to get more delineated information. What I understand, and this makes sense to me, through a litigation process, given the fact that this obligates you, this particular process, different than just going into court, requires the appointment of an arbitrator. That is where this is in the process. And while I get that there's frustration over the time it is taking, and I certainly understand that this board has been hearing these matters, I can only advise you that we have to go through these processes as they work. However,
I understand,
I am
but my
going
question
to-
is a little bit simpler than that. Has there been any action in the past 35 days since the grievance was filed on June 10th? That was 35 days ago. And if this particular attorney is employed by HART, certainly something has happened in 35 days besides the grievance being filed.
Good morning, everybody. Brenda Bailey, Director of Legal Services, so your in-house counsel. So the grievance was in fact filed June 10th. Actually, the grievance was actually denied on June 10th. And between that time, they had a 30 to 45-day period where in which they could have demanded arbitration. They did that. They actually, this past week on Friday, I believe, they decided to strike. They wanted to strike an arbitrator panel. So right now, that's why we are in this current position. And unfortunately, I think there are so many different aspects that come into play with respect to this contract issue. So I have asked that Ms. Mandel seek an attorney-client session for the sake of the board for your benefit so that you can be properly advised as to the issues. But I think conferring with you, board director, I think it's kind of hard to kind of make these kind of demands to insist that the arbitration happen within 90 days. I think it's unfair to put us in that position at that time. I think we're still currently doing some research on the arbitrators that were provided or insisted upon.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I actually, understand that from a legal perspective. One more question. As directors, would this have to come from you or the attorney, David Adams, just basic answers to questions, like something very simple? Did we follow the contract? Yes or no? Is it that simple? Can it be as simple as that? Did we meet the obligations of the contract in paying the employees? I know that we gave them some funding, a one-time bonus, but did we meet the obligation of the contract? It's very simple, and that I want the answer to that. When can I get that information?
Why don't we plan this? Because I understand your frustration.
That could be an email.
No, I would not recommend that we do
Okay.
anything like that via email, because we are
Okay.
in a litigation process. We have two options. We have meetings with you individually, or we can seek an attorney-client session as a closed session for litigation. What I have to research to find out, and I can do that by the end of the day today, but it would still require a process, is whether or not I can, in this particular process, utilize the provisions of Florida statute for a closed session. This is not traditional litigation. If that is not an option, and if it is an option, I think that is the best option, to do a closed session, and that way we can ask all those questions and get those questions answered in a manner where we can all be in the same room together, but in a closed session. If not, I will seek Mr. Adams to have individualized conversations with you as your attorney in this matter.
Well, Director Myers, can we amend your motion to say that they provide that information to the board within a week? Because that's already a contract that exists. Would you be
Yes.
open to that?
Yes, I would amend it, and then I would change the word from demanding to priority.
Within a week?
Higher priority.
What the contract specifically states, and provide that information to the board.
And does the second amenable to that? I don't know who the second was. Who seconded?
Marvin,
Are you amenable to that,
Director
sir? Okay, great, thank you. Next, we have board member.
Oh, and one, I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Once we find this information out, is it our obligation as a board to not share that information with the public? I mean, should we hold that because it's in arbitration and a legal matter? We should not provide this information publicly to anyone,
That would
correct?
be my best legal
Your
advice.
recommendation, okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead, ma'am. And then board member Myers.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to mention, Ms. Mandel, typically situations of this nature, or because of the sensitivity of it, it usually is handled by the CEO or legal. And as a board, we don't usually get into the detail of this type of scenario, and we rely on our legal team to handle the nature of this. But because of the fact that it has come up repeatedly, it does not give us an opportunity to understand what is taking place, because we don't have the knowledge or the awareness of the situation, and therefore employees continue to come to the board meetings and talk about the situation, and we are at a disadvantage. And so my recommendation or ask was to bring us up to speed in a private meeting and share with us what the situation is and where we are, so we have an understanding, and we wouldn't have this type of open forum and communication, and at some point, you would understand where we stand with this, and then therefore communicate with the ATU and on our behalf, and continue to negotiate and whatever the case may be. But typically, we would not, this would be handled on our behalf. But because of this nature and the exception to it, we are involved, and we are involved in a greater detail than we would normally be. So my request, as a result of this conversation, is that we would have a private meeting, get educated on it, make sure that we have an understanding of what is happening, and then represent us as a board with the appropriate personnel, and then you would know the level of priority we would ask you to take on our behalf, if it's Adams, if it's yourself, or whomever inside internal counsel and so forth. But typically, that would be, you guys would handle that, so we don't want to, I would say, run the internal workings of HART, because that typically is in the responsibility of the board. So I just want to make sure we clarify that, but we do not want to sound as if we are not hearing our employees and the concerns of the employees that have been brought forward over and over again. So hopefully I am clarifying from my perspective where we are and what my request would be at this point.
And, yes, sir, thank you. And I did want to, we have next Board Member Myers, Board Member Schisler, Board Member Hartfield. Did you want to say something next, sir? I mean, because, okay. Yeah, and I wanted to intervene, if I may, and affirm what Board Member Williams said, which is, these are things that typically our board is not involved in, and whatnot. I know, in fact, we had that town hall on June 18th, in part spurred because of some of the issues that have arisen here in public comments, et cetera. I don't think it came up during the town hall. I don't believe it did at all. And we'll probably have one another. I think I've had like 80 town halls in the last 8 years as an elected official. I love it. By the way, if you're in public office, get very, very, very thick skin. That's a fact, right? As all of us know who are in public office. You got to get used to it. But I do agree with that, the overall sentiment, which is this is something we don't hear about a lot, that we never deal with as a board, that we delegate to our CO and the staff, et cetera. But given the urgency that we're hearing from people, I think it is important, and I think it is reasonable for us to, I'll be supportive of the motion. Let's just put it that way. But go ahead, ma'am. And then Board Member Schisler.
I want to ask legal counsel, can we have a private meeting? Because.
Well, you can always have individual private meetings with attorneys. That's not the issue. The question is whether or not we can have a closed session.
I understand that. Okay, I understand that. I just wanted to ask a question.
Absolutely.
Okay,
No, it's
so we want to
absolutely
make sure
appropriate.
that Adams is in the meeting, so whatever date that is scheduled.
Absolutely.
He needs to be in the meeting with us as well.
I would agree with you on
Okay,
that.
thank you.
The only question, just so I'm clarifying this, we absolutely can have individual meetings with you all. The question is whether or not you could do it as a closed session where we can all be meeting together under the litigation exception to the Sunshine Law.
Yes.
Thank you. Board Member Schisler. Go
Yes,
ahead,
thank
sir.
you, Mr. Chair. To Ms. Williams' point, you got to remember, we set policy. We don't dictate what happens and how it happens. We set policy. However, this is a very big issue, and I know that this is something that's been brought before us for months and months and months. I would hope, though, that we have this private session, it's done as a group, so that we can all learn from each other's questions.
Yeah.
I don't want to meet with him one-on-one, because I don't necessarily, I may hear a question from you that spurs a question, something else, and we'll get well-educated in the entire issue, and then we can advise Mr. Drainville and the staff as to what needs to be done going forward. So I will support, and it's going to take longer than a week, I think, to put this together. So we need to know by the end of the week whether it can be done, obviously, and then schedule something early August so that we can get together and come up with, we all get educated, we all know we're all on the same page. Because right now, I don't think we're all on the same page. I think that's very, very important going forward.
And Board Member Knight and Board Member Myers. Did you have something directly responsive to his, ma'am, or?
Oh, no.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Real quick, good conversation. And we did it before, not that pretty much, except for one, all the board members here, that maybe when you get in contact with the Attorney Adams, that we can also have a couple dates so that can work pretty much, we can come to a consensus that we have that already. So when you talk to him, we got a couple dates here, you ain't got to try to get in contact with everybody, we right up. Now we can do it. 7, 10 days or whenever, as soon as possible.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. Ma'am, go ahead.
And my last comment is going to be that it'll be in the afternoons. I'm pretty sure all of our schedules are already busy during the day. But if we do like a 3 or 4 o'clock, that probably will work for all of us to be in the meeting. So we know council, well, I don't know where everybody meets, so I'll leave it there, but an afternoon meeting.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? Yes, sir, please.
So to Director Williams' point, I'm very sympathetic, and I understand the passions in this particular, but what they're saying is we violated the contract. So we have a CBA in place, that we violate the contract, there's a grievance process, and there's an arbitration. What I don't want to do is set precedents here, and every time that a grievance doesn't go their way, that they're going to come to this board and they're going to get, and this is what's going to happen every single time. So I just want to make the board aware that this, I get the situation and the money, but this is no different than a contract violation. The reason we have a CBA in place is because there's a grievance process and arbitration, and the board does not normally get involved in these matters. So just wanted to state that for the record.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Okay, great. Okay, let's go ahead and do a roll call. And again, I'll be supporting this. And again, the points that have been said on our traditional role here are very well taken. I think this is something that we're all, yes, sir, and with something that we can make a reasonable inquiry on, but it's got to be done responsibly, obviously. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Just because we've had so many things discussed, can we say one more time exactly what this vote is going to be on?
Point well taken, sir. Go ahead, ma'am.
Who's the secretary?
Was
We've
it-
said so much.
Board Member Williams, I believe was.
If you want, I can go ahead and restate what I understood the motion to be.
Yeah, I can.
It's my understanding that the motion was for us, for legal counsel to come back within the next week to identify to the board members what the options are for either individualized meetings or whether or not we can do a closed session, and that we encourage, maybe is that the right terminology, or make this item a priority to be done within 3 months. That's what I understand the motion was to be.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, and anyone?
Yeah, and amended to communicate with the board within a week, what that is.
Yes.
Roll call, please.
Director Cameron Cepeda,
Yes.
Director Hartfield,
Yes.
Director Henderson,
Yes.
Director Hobbs,
Yes.
Director Knight,
Yes.
Director McAlpatrick,
Yes.
Director Myers,
Yes.
Director Schizler,
Yes.
Chair Vieira.
Yes.
Director Williams,
Yes.
Director Wostel.
No.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Okay, next is Board Member Hartfield. Now, again, I usually wouldn't press this issue, but we don't have a vice chair, so I can only be here for about 25 more minutes, FYI. So I have a 1:30 and then a mediation at 2, so just FYI.
Old business or new business?
This is new business, right? Yep. Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Chair, I defer in the interest of time. I'll bring up this matter in a future board meeting.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Director Hartfield. We appreciate you, sir. And next, Board Member Wilson. Go ahead, sir.
Mine is very brief. As many of you know, we only have one really external revenue-generating mechanism, and that is our advertisements on our buses and on the TICO extension. There has been speculation from the state's transportation authority over a new law about them potentially fully restricting us, as we've heard many times today over our budgetary situation, that we're threading a tight needle. I believe it's appropriate for us to take official position of the board to respectfully request that the state's transportation authority take into consideration the delicate nature and need for those marketing funds, and that I do understand, and we have, I believe, in my opinion, never violated the rule of not advertising something that be considered hyper-political. We have always followed that rule, and I think that should also be in the letter, and just express to them our dire need to maintain that external funding source. That letter could come directly from the chair, expressing our voice as the board of directors for HART. So I will make that a formal motion.
Second.
And if there's any other clarity that's needed, there's debates back and forth. There was a potential letter that was coming to clear it up. That letter has not come, and I have spoken to the appropriate parties at the Department of Transportation, and I just believe that we should take an official position politely requesting that they consider that.
Thank you, sir. We have a motion by Board Member Wosel, a second, I believe, first by Board Director Schizler. Any debate or comment? Okay, roll call, please.
Director Cameron Cepeda,
Yes.
Director Hartfield,
Yes.
Director Henderson,
Yes.
Director Hobbs,
Yes.
Director Knight,
Yes.
Director McAlpatrick,
Yes.
Director Myers,
Yes.
Director Schizler,
Yes.
Chair Viera,
Yes.
Director Williams,
Yes.
Director Wallstall.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. Is there any further new business? Okay, great. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, and have a great July.
12:25, great meeting.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
We have time for July.
I try.
We have the other meeting?
I got a rush to get to my 1 o'clock.
Julia.
Do you mind for a second? Okay, you too.